Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Audit and Finance Committee meeting on February the 7th. I will now call on Tim Brubaker, Deputy Clerk, to conduct the roll call. Tim.
Thank you. Chair Redmond?
Present.
Councillor Craig?
Present.
Councillor Deutschmann? Councillor Erb? Councillor Foxton?
Present.
Chair Harris?
Present.
Councillor Hunick?
Present.
Councillor James?
Present.
Councillor Liggett? Councillor McCabe? Present. Councillor Nowak? Councillor Salonen?
Present.
Councillor Shantz?
Present.
Councillor Vanovic is on his way. Councillor Williams?
Present.
And Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you.
You'll be right back. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gathered today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements, and their contributions to our community. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I would like to now call upon Samantha Lawson, CAO of the Grand River Conservation Authority, and Sonia Radoja, Manager Corporate Services of the Grand River Conservation Authority. Good morning, Samantha.
Good morning, and thank you very much for this opportunity for us to present to you our draft 2023 budget. In terms of the makeup of the presentation, the first half, we provided a little bit more background, recognizing that there's a number of new faces around Regional Council. So the first half of the presentation I'll be doing, and I'll be providing you with some information around the programs and services that we provide in the region related to the levy, so the programs that are supported through the levy. And then Sonia, my colleague, is going to come up and talk to you and take a bit of a deeper dive into the financial part of the budget. But there's a few things I just wanted to say, given that it is a new council, and just thank you and also acknowledge the significant relationship that we have with the region of Waterloo. You have world-class staff that are talented and dedicated, but you also provide world-class programs when it comes to water resources and environmental management that are significant not only to the residents that live in the region, but to the 35 municipalities and their residents up and down the river. Unique to Southern Ontario, the Grand River is a working river, and by that I mean that the municipalities up and downstream of the river discharge their treated effluent into the river, and there's also a number of municipalities that take the surface water from the river to support their drinking water systems. So at the end of the day, the region is one of our largest urban centers in the Grand River watershed, and the programs that they provide that support water resource management and environmental management have a significant impact on the overall vitality and health of the Grand River watershed. So just wanted to acknowledge that for you today. So again, the Grand River watershed is one of the largest watersheds in Southern Ontario. The Grand River and its tributaries lie at the heart of one of the richest and fastest growing regions in our province. The region of Waterloo is the largest urban center in the watershed and has some of the most complex and significant environmental systems. Managing the water and environmental resources while balancing the need for development is a tricky task. At the GRCA, we know the future prosperity of the watershed, its municipalities and communities are linked to the health of the river, its tributaries, and the natural environment. The Grand River Conservation Authority operates a wide range of programs in engineering, planning, land management, recreation, and education. These programs and services are provided across the watershed to municipalities so that technical expertise is provided in a cost-effective way. Our strategic mandate is to develop and implement watershed-based programs that protect people and property from flooding and erosion, improve the health of the watershed, connect people to the environment, and manage our land holdings in a responsible and sustainable manner. Our programs balance human, environmental, and economic needs so that we can deliver our vision of a healthy watershed now and for future generations. We build relationship and trust with our watershed partners to achieve our common goals. Warmer air and water temperatures, bigger rainstorms, and longer periods of drought are all consequences of climate change. This poses new challenges in managing floods, improving water quality, and securing water supplies for municipalities, farmers, industry, and the natural environment. The GRCA owns and maintains 27 dams throughout the watershed. 7 of these dams are large multi-purpose dams and reservoirs, which are actively used year-round to manage river flows. These multi-purpose dams were built to work as a system to address frequent and severe flooding, extremely low summer river flows, and challenges with water quality. These goals sometimes compete with one another and must be managed in a delicate balance to ensure adequate water supplies for downstream users while reducing the risk to flooding. Through memorandums of understanding with the region, the GRCA provides technical advice on Planning Act applications and other planning documents. The primary objective of the Source Protection Program is to protect current and future drinking water sources from contamination and depletion. There is ongoing work to update the Source Protection Plan when new information becomes available. And some of this new information can include new infrastructure such as new wells, updating technical analysis based on revised technical rules, and updates to policies to improve implementation. The Grand River Source Protection Plan is updated frequently to reflect the changes in the region of Waterloo. Lake Erie Region Source Protection staff support the plan's implementation through regular municipal implementation working group meetings and one-on-one collaborations. The GRCA's watershed-wide wastewater optimization program promotes data-based decision-making and operational practices to achieve performance targets that go beyond compliance. This allows municipalities to better understand the capabilities and capacities of their facilities and get the most out of these important assets. In December, several regional plants were recognized for their achievement in wastewater optimization. The Ayr and Preston wastewater treatment plants achieved gold level, and Kitchener, Waterloo, New Hamburg, and St. Jacobs received silver through the GRCA's recognition program. The GRCA also delivers a voluntary rural water quality program on behalf of 6 upper-tier municipalities in the watershed to help farmers implement best practices to improve and protect surface and groundwater quality. Each program is locally developed with input from the farming community, and variation in grant rates and eligible projects are tailored to reflect local priorities and budgets. Since 1998, more than 7,000 projects have been completed, with $22 million in grants and more than $62 million invested by municipalities and landowners. In 2022, 81 rural water quality program projects were completed in the region, representing a total investment of $722,000 in water quality. In 2021, Council approved the extension of the rural water quality program in the region to the end of 2025. Thank you very much for that. The region's $6.5 million contribution to the program since 1998 has resulted in approximately 2,100 projects, with $23 million invested in the Waterloo region. This vital investment not only helps improve the quality of the Grand River and protects drinking water sources for watershed residents, but it also supports the rural economy, builds green infrastructure, and climate change resiliency on the landscape. We know that spending time in nature has a positive effect on people's physical and mental health. At the GRCA, we connect people with the natural environment by providing environmental education programs and access to outdoor spaces. A vital part of the watershed's recreational infrastructure, our conservation areas host about 2 million visitors a year and are important parts of the local economy. We pay property taxes, hire local staff, and support the vibrant tourism industry in our communities. The GRCA owns approximately 48,000 acres of recreation and natural land, which includes 11 active fee-for-use conservation areas, the Luther Marsh Wildlife Management Area, 5 nature centers, as well as cottage lots, farm leases, properties for passive recreation, and the rail trails. Some key initiatives that are underway to meet the new requirements of the regulation include a conservation area strategy, which is being developed to establish objectives that will inform GRCA's decision-making related to the land it owns and controls, including decisions related to policies governing acquisition and disposition of these lands. Staff are also involved in developing a land inventory that will compile certain property information, including acquisition details, categorizing the land, and a new requirement under Bill 23 is to identify conservation area lands that would support housing development. So the next part of the presentation, I'm just going to pass over to Sonia Radoja, my colleague here, who's going to speak in more detail to the financial components.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity to present our budget. The challenges that we confronted in this year's budget exercise was to manage the current economic inflationary pressures, which really took the form of pressures on wages and benefits, significant insurance cost increases, and managing the supply chain challenges. We also had to incorporate some staff restructuring given recent retirements in 2022, and also to put us into the proper place to manage under the new regulations. We also are seeking to manage our conservation areas, which are experiencing growth. We had another record year in revenues. We now surpassed over $11 million compared to $9.5 million last year. And that certainly will impacts the additional operating costs that creates, and it also helps to address our infrastructure costs. And finally, as part of the new regulations, we will be required to develop a new business model for delivering our environmental education program, since it will be considered a Category 3 program, where you do not allocate any general levy to that program. So some of the key assumptions that went into this budget was an overall increase for compensation and benefits of 4%, which would be rate increases, grid movements, benefit cost increases. There are 3 additional staffing positions in this program. We certainly had to add an additional amount for students, given the additional volume. And also in 2023, students can opt into OMER, so that we had to factor in a cost for that as well. And I'd like to highlight, though, that for the increase in staffing, that's not being affected so much on the bottom line or levy request. One of those positions is a temporary position. We had set aside some money for a transition reserve to deal with some of the requests under the new regulations. And one of the positions is in our engineering division, which we will fund from reserves initially, and that we will have to tackle and phase in over time into our operating cost budgets. We tried to hold our property tax overall expense constant. Insurance, as I mentioned, was a main factor in increasing costs over the year and driving the levy increase. We are trying to hold administrative costs overall constant. Now, within that, our IT costs are increasing, but we are seeing a trend since COVID that some of our administrative costs in the ways of travel and communications and supplies have experienced a reduction, so we're hoping that is offsetting. And similarly, just our general operating expenses we're holding constant. And we did have to increase because of the park revenue, the park activity expenses. And the budget, compared to last year, had some one-time expenses that we back out when we start the 2023 exercise, about $400,000. The overall impact is that our operating budget is increasing by $1.2 million, or 4.5%. And you can see that summarized here. We like to look at this budget in terms of these 3 categories. It helps explain overall fluctuations. Now, by this draft in January, we are basically about the same as last year, but as you can see, our operating, which I just walked through, is up about $1.2 million, but our capital is down by $500,000, and our special projects are down. And I'm going to speak to each of these categories a bit more in detail. So our operating budget's about $28 million, and Sam basically went through all the different programs we offer. So we have our watershed management, our conservation areas, our education program, corporate services, and communications, the broad categories. Our capital budget sits this year at about $4.6 million, and the main areas are our dams, our water control structures, the parks, equipment, and motor pool. And more specifically, as relates to our capital projects, we've put in about $1.5 million for water capital and $2 million for the conservation areas. I'd like to highlight here that if the water water management capital budget fluctuates, and they have a year where there's more than 1.5 million. It's usually, that extra cost is cost shared, usually with the province, but in addition to that, we don't seek to increase the municipal levy. We maintain a reserve, and we can fund those fluctuations through our reserve. And similarly with conservation areas, there's a reserve, so if their capital needs in a particular year were high, we could draw upon reserves and not rely necessarily on visitation revenue. And the third category is special projects, and the key characteristics here that I highlight is these projects do not rely on general municipal levy. There's external funding opportunities here that fund the program. The biggest two being the first two are source water protection that the province continues to be committed to fund 100%. It's about a $700,000 budget. And the rural water quality grants that are budgeted for about $800,000 in total for the year, where municipalities provide capital grants that then flow through to landowners on their projects that they undertake. In terms of our funding breakdown, this highlights that the municipal levy is 37%, just over 1/3 of our total funding source, and that our self-generated revenue is almost half of our funding that comes in. The government grants program, you can see, are small, 7%. And that's one of the main ones there is what we call our Section 39 funding that the province provides for water control structures and flood forecasting and warning. The other municipal is mainly that rural water quality grant program, and then we have our reserves. So how does this affect our levy ask this year? We're asking for almost 13 million in levy for our budget, which translates to a 3.5% increase over prior year, or about a 450,000 increase. And the region in Waterloo, when we apply the apportionment formula, is coming in just slightly under the overall increase at 3.4%. And an ask of about 6.5 million compared to 6.3 in the prior year. Another statistic we like to share is how does this translate into a cost per person in the watershed, and it's about $11.37 per person that the levy is covering. Mr. Chair, that ends the presentation.
Thank you. Chair Redmond, please.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm always so proud of GRCA and what they do. I have two questions. I'll ask them both, and then I'll let you answer. One is, you mentioned an inventory for land that could be built on, and that's part of, I believe, Bill 23. And I'm just wondering what that expectation is for reporting. Does it go to whatever municipality that it resides in? Is it something that goes directly to the province? And is there any expectation of evaluation from GRCA, or just saying that this is land that could be built on?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. So the inventory itself is an internal document that the authority has, but the purpose of collecting it is to be able to share it with our member municipalities. In terms of the process for disposing of it, there's actually a number of criteria that the property has to get screened against before it can be disposed of. I would say in terms of property that's suitable for housing, it's probably a very small fraction of the land that the GRCA owns. Just the premise of the reason why we purchased the land in the first place was because of the natural resources. The process that we would go through in terms of disposing of it requires us to first approach the municipalities to see if there's an interest in purchasing the property, as well as other public agencies. And then if nobody's interested, then we have to go to the public market to dispose of it.
So that was my long one question. The other question was, I love the LiDAR technology that you have, and for, you know, obviously I'm not a professional, I would say that it offers 3D imaging of the area, and I'm just wondering, are the costs for that, or any monies that are attracted by using that, or other bodies using it, is that reflected anywhere in the budget?
So through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the funding for the LiDAR, that was predominantly provided by the province, I believe through the Ministry of OMAFRA, Agriculture and Food. The use of it can be used, not only for GRCA for our flooding and water, but also for stormwater management. It provides very detailed topography information so that you can get the 3D imaging. I think one of the things we're very lucky in the Grand River watershed is it's predominantly be done in that area, so municipalities can access that information as well. And I do believe actually some of the municipalities, I think the city of Kitchener, is utilizing some of that information for some of their stormwater design and information as well.
Thank you.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you very much, or through you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. As Chair Redmond said, greatly value the work that you do and how important it is to, as you outlined, some of the particularly sustainability of our watershed and the opportunities for getting into nature. So really appreciate that. And I love the photography, whoever took some of those pictures, kudos to them. Just a couple questions, just to pick up on the Bill 23. I'm just wondering if there's other implications or challenges that you are anticipating because of Bill 23. And then my other question just is about the repair and maintenance. So I can stop with that first question and then.
Sure.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of Bill 23, there were a number of changes that were implemented to the Conservation Authorities Act. Significantly, most of them deal with the planning and development process as well as our permit regulation that we have, the Ontario Regulation 15006. So those are the development permits that we issue. They put in a number of enabling provisions into the Act and directives. So some of those directives came out January 1st. So that was where the province froze our development and permit fees for the year. And the second one was the prescribed acts, which is prohibiting conservation authorities from participating in the planning process related to natural heritage. There are a number of other regulations that I'm understanding are coming out in the near future. Through Bill 229, which was about a year and a half ago, we also had about 7 or 8 new regulations that came out that you'll see being implemented next year. So we're still waiting on some of the results from Bill 229 as well as some of the changes coming out from Bill 23.
Thank you for that. I guess there's things we need to keep our eyes on, particularly with respect to planning. And it does concern me that some of your ability to consult on some of the planning, the future planning is being removed from conservation authorities. I find that really troubling and potentially dangerous because of floodplain issues and things like that. But thank you for that. My other question is just, you had that about the 1.5 million. Just want to make sure I understand that for repairing and maintenance of some of your infrastructure. What is sort of the state of the infrastructure that you have? Because those dams are obviously, the infrastructure that you have is obviously critically important to ensuring that, they don't burst and then that creates like millions of dollars more in damage. So I guess partly I'm wondering, which everyone's probably going to cringe, but it's like, is that actually enough to make sure that the infrastructure we have is safe?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we have a pretty intensive inspection and maintenance program that we operate related to not only the 7 large multipurpose dams, but we also have 20 other small run-of-the-river dams as well that we maintain. In terms of maintenance, again, we do a 5-year forecast, forecasting out some of the maintenance requirements. We just went through an exercise where we assessed all of the major dams in terms of their operation and risk and identified areas and improvements from operation perspectives, but also some maintenance perspectives as well. The province does provide a program called WECI, which is Water Erosion Control Infrastructure Program. So we apply annually to that program where the province provides subsidized grants in terms of maintenance. One of the other things too, in terms of the land that we own, generally speaking, if the province provided funding for the original purpose, when we dispose of that land, we have to put it into a special reserve. And that reserve can be used for large maintenance projects related to the infrastructure, but also to floodplain management as well. So we have a number of staff that are focused exclusively on the management of those large dams and the infrastructure. And I think because we've done a great job of maintaining them, every year we do something towards some of the major dams that maintains them to a standard that they can operate the way that they should.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you, outlining as well some of your budgetary pressures, because we know this is a really challenging year. So thank you very much.
Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, and you may not be able to answer, this is a bit of an unfair question, okay, but you can get back to us or me on this. But the dam in Riverside Park that sits in the middle of the river, the city never built that dam, and it was built by one of the local mills. City has taken on some of the responsibility trying to figure out what to do. But if it were to walk away and say, well, it's not our river, what would GRCA do about this? You can get back to me on it.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think some of the challenges that the bed of the river is owned by the Crown. So it's the province that owns the bed of the river. I think GRCA has participated in the EA that the municipality had completed for the assessment of that dam. So we would still provide support from a regulatory perspective. But in terms of abandoned dams, I haven't actually ever dealt with one of those, so I'd have to speak to the province probably to see what that
I would
is.
appreciate a fuller answer on it, because it's sitting there and something has to be done. And there's a great community concern about it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
I don't have any other questions at this time, colleagues. Samantha, Sonia, Karen, thank you so much for coming in today to present. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. Colleagues, moving on to item number 5, the public hearing of a development charges complaint under subsection 24 of the Development Charges Act 1997 as amended. We'll now be holding a public hearing of a development charges complaint under the Development Charges Act. Under the Act, a person who is required to pay a development charge may complain to the council of the municipality imposing the development charges. Regional Council has delegated the authority for holding a complaint hearing to this committee. The process that we will follow for the hearing today is as follows. John Doherty and Kevin Dias with McLean Piecer will have an opportunity to make a statement summarizing their position. Richard Brooks of the Legal Services Division of the region will provide a statement summarizing the regional staff position. The representatives from McLean Piecer will have an opportunity to reply to the regional staff position. I will allow committee members to ask any clarifying questions after each party speaks. Both parties will be given an opportunity to make any closing remarks. The committee will then deliberate and make a decision on the complaint. In making that decision, the committee may dismiss the complaint or decide that there has been an incorrect determination or error in the application of the DC bylaw and then rectify that error. I want to stress that we are not here to have a policy discussion relating to the development charge bylaw, but are only here to consider whether the existing bylaw has been applied properly. Decisions of this committee are final and binding, but can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. With that, I will now call on John Doherty and Kevin Dias. John and Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'm here with my colleague Kevin Dias, who's going to lead the PowerPoint presentation. We're here on behalf of Piecer Limited.
John, if I can interrupt you, we are having a bit of a difficult time hearing you clearly. I'm not sure how or what device you're maybe using. I don't know if we want to take a second or two to correct that. I don't know if a call-in option is available via the Zoom link here, or maybe turn your volume down, they're suggesting. I don't know if IT wants to provide any, maybe back up a bit, I don't know. It just, we're not able to hear you very clearly.
Is that better?
No. Yeah, do you have a headset by chance, or maybe
Thanks.
we'll take a minute here. We're going to double check things on our end as well. Just bear with us a second or two. Kevin, do you want to talk just to see? Is Kevin on the line as well? Kevin, are you on the call? Or is it just John?
Mr. Chair, trying to just work out the technology here. Just give us a moment.
Yeah, we can't. We're not going to be able to hear you here. Just a second. John, we are going to send you a phone number that will allow you to call in that will sync to the video here. So you'll do that by. John, do you want to try it again now with the headset on? Do you have a headset?
Now is that better?
It's a little bit better, John. We want to be able to hear you clearly. So maybe just give us your first line again. We'll see if our colleagues.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
No, it's not going to be good enough, I don't think. Do you want to check have you sent him an email? If you want to check your email, John, are you in front of your email desktop that you can check your email with some instructions there to call in on a landline? Do you have that capability?
I do.
Yeah, John, did you get that email by chance? Because we might let us know if you received it.
We're just throwing that out.
Mr. Chair, could we just have him come back and we can move on with the meeting?
Yeah, John, I understand you may be in Kitchener. Is there a chance that you would make your way down to regional headquarters to be in person for this this presentation? John, are you still there? Yeah. John, is there the ability for you to join Kevin? Oh, I see a phone number.
Yes, we've now dialed in.
Oh my God. Kevin, are you online?
Kevin's assisting me here in my office.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they did a sound check with Kevin, and Kevin. John, can you read a first line here, please, and we'll do a sound check?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I would say that that's much better. So let's proceed. And if we run into any further problems, we may have to encourage you to come here. That's the benefit of being here in person. We don't have to deal with technology, but let's give it a try. So, John, proceed.
All right, I think we're good. Although I'm getting the feedback.
Yeah, you're gonna have to mute your actual computer because now we're getting a double feedback thing going on. So,
Is that better?
yeah, that's better. Yep. All right, let's go.
There.
We're just seeing the meeting host will let you in on the screen, on the Zoom call on the screen. Is there a way to let him access it via the video, but just voice on the phone?
So we can let the screen back in so that you're not seeing that message anymore. Just make sure you mute the computer sound because we're hearing the feedback from the double loop.
Yeah, we've turned the... You There
Yes,
we go.
are we good?
Yeah, you got to mute your computer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear us now? Can you
We
hear us now?
We can hear you now. We're not getting
Okay. There we go.
All right,
You're all good.
I think we're good.
All right, go ahead, John, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for the technical issues. So we're here this morning with regards to the complaint on behalf of our client, McLean Peaster Limited, pursuant to Section 20 of the Development Charges Act. And our submissions today will be brief. We'll first provide a brief background to the matter and outline the remedy that our client seeks for what it views as an inequitable application of development charges by both the region and the city. As further background, for those who are unfamiliar with our client, it's a Kitchener-based family-operated company that develops and operates a number of commercial enterprises, including golf clubs, self-storage facilities, and residential and commercial property. The matter at issue today concerns the development at 375 New Dundee Road in the Dune area of Kitchener. This is also Regional Road 12. At this location, our client has developed a self-storage facility with retail space and adjacent parking area with 100,000 square foot of gross floor area. Site plan with the City of Kitchener that's dated February 3/22 that is registered on title. We've included two of the schedules to the site plans here in order to give you a better sense of the development on the site. And this is the full-size version of that. You can see the entranceway to the site. By way of further clarification, this is the invoice that was received for the development charges totaling just over $2 million, of which approximately $1.3 million was paid for regional development charges. In calculating these development charges, the region used non-residential general services plus water DC rate, and that's based on the services available to the site as conveyed by regional staff in August of 2022 on the background for the basis of the charge. City used non-residential, no sanitary suburban DC rate. The invoice was paid under protest by our client on August 25th, 1922. The building permit was issued for a multi-story industrial self-storage facility following the payment. The basis of the complaint is that unusually here, no municipal water services were available at the property line. It's unusual for there to be no water main connection point on the frontage of the site, yet the DC rates were charged on the basis of including the provision of water services. The region refused connection to the 450 millimeter transmission water main on the far side of the road. Plain Peaster was required to bring water services from the 300 millimeter water main at Pinnacle Drive to its property. So the basis of our client's complaints is that the rate applied and the lack of credit or any form of compensation by way of the 200 millimeter water main was installed in the Plain Peaster. Important to reiterate that no municipal water services were available at the property line, which is an unusual situation. Our client was additionally not permitted to connect to that main water service provided by the region, although a developer further down at 525 New Dundee Road was so permitted. And so in order for our client to have water service, it had to connect to the 300 millimeter water main at Pinnacle Drive and bring a 200 millimeter water main across New Dundee Road to the property line. Having been charged development charges on the basis of water being available to the site, it was our client's reasonable expectation for the new 200 millimeter water main to be located in the regional right-of-way, and initial plans were prepared on that basis, as you can see on this plan prepared by NTE, the engineers for the developer. And you can see this marked in yellow. I understand that regional staff were aware that our client required water services in 2022 and didn't tell our client's engineer about a planned MTO detour that would have prohibited construction of water services until 2024. Here you can see the full plan for the water main to be included in the right-of-way. In order to expedite matters, our client proceeded to install the 200 millimeter water main within its property line, which you can see marked in orange. And that is in addition to bringing the purple line across New Dundee Road. Our client was also requested to install a T connection on the 200 millimeter water main where it enters private property. This would be for the benefit of other developments located west of the property. We understand that the city now has a 200 millimeter water main crossing New Dundee Road, which is the area marked in purple. So the other unusual feature here is that in order to have the 200 millimeter water line installed, it had to be installed on private property. And the supply of private land is not the presumption upon which development charges are contemplated. Use of McLean-Feaster's land for the 200 millimeter water main, say, is akin to an expropriation of an easement for the establishment of that water main. So if we look at the costs of the installation of that water main, comprises $222,000 exclusive of HST. Together, with HST would total $251,800. Note that this figure does not include the septic costs that our client no longer seeks, nor is our client seeking any credit with regards to the industrial classification. Basis in law for the credit that we are seeking falls under Section 38 of the Development Charges Act, which provides that if a municipality agrees to allow a person to perform work that relates to a service to which a development charge bylaw relates, the municipality shall give the person a credit towards the development charge in accordance with the agreement. The amount of the credit is the reasonable cost of doing the work as agreed by the municipality and the person who is to be given the credit. This principle is further embodied in Section 8 of the Region's DC bylaw, with which I'm sure you're familiar. I need not read that, but it's available for your consideration. And it's also reflected in the city DC bylaw as well. The Ontario LPAT, then was, now the OLT, set out the test, threefold test for the application of Section 38 credit. And it's our submission that we meet all three of these tests. One, that the owner has performed certain work, which has undoubtedly been done by the installation of the 200 millimeter service, including the installation crossing New Dundee Road. Secondly, that the municipality has agreed to allow performance of the work, and there was an off-site works agreement that was entered into with regards to this matter. And thirdly, that the work must relate to a service to which a development charges bylaw relates. Clearly, that is the case. So we meet all three of those tests. And in the Phantom Development case, the board set out that the Section 38 doesn't require a written agreement to provide the credit on the part of the municipality, but rather that it has only allowed the work to be performed by the owner and demonstrated by some manner of conduct, be it a formalized agreement, an oral agreement, the circumstances of the arrangements relating to the work, acquiescence, or a combination thereof. We submit, again, that all of those are applicable in this circumstance. Now, we know that the local service policy in the region's DC background study provides that the 200 millimeter water main installed by McLean-Feaster is considered to be its responsibility, but it's our understanding that based on Section 59 of the Development Charges Act, that the local service policy is relevant only in respect of subdivision and consent applications and not to development approved under Section 41 of the Planning Act. Takes us to the remedy that we seek. I understand requires coordination between the region and the city, and that the region has charged a water rate where water services were not available, and the city has obtained a benefit by way of a water main installed on property that includes a T connection servicing future property. So we seek
on behalf of our client for bringing water services to the property, the sum of $220 plus HST as the reasonable cost of doing the work, and for the benefit received by way of an installed T connection that will service future development to the west of 3075 New Dundee Road, and either, secondly, A, the municipality to compensate the Plain Feaster for the land value of the water main that's impacted the land calculated as an easement. And we've calculated that based on the land area of 0.15 of an acre at 50% for a standard easement, and at the basis of $750,000 per acre. In addition to that, there would be ongoing and exceptional maintenance costs that is otherwise going to be incurred over the lifespan of the ownership of the property. And that's pursuant to an estimate from our client's engineer. Or alternatively, our client would be prepared to have the municipality take full ownership of that water main by way of an easement on the basis of the calculation that we've had of the land value of that easement area. And in that way, the proper ownership and maintenance of the what should be a public facility would be restored. Those are our submissions, and we thank you for your careful consideration.
Thank you. I will now call on Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm here from Legal Services of the Region of Waterloo. I also have Mr. Fetty here from the Finance Department, and he's the manager responsible for the application of the Development Charges Bylaw. So the staff report's at page 27 of this committee's agenda package. And it's correct that the region in 2022 charged $1.3 million for a development charge on this self-storage facility. As I understand the submissions from Mr. Doherty this morning, that he is no longer seeking reimbursement for or a return of monies in regard to the industrial discount that the region has in its development charges bylaw. And he's no longer seeking a reimbursement for the septic that was addressed in the staff report. So the only issue that I will address this morning on behalf of staff is in regard to the credit that is being sought in regard to the water main. So that regard, the important thing to understand is that as a two-tier municipality, the region has jurisdiction over water production, and the City of Kitchener has jurisdiction over water distribution. So in that regard, water distribution mains are the jurisdiction of the City of Kitchener. In that regard, it is staff's understanding that this complaint is also being brought forward to the City of Kitchener on February 13th, next Monday, for, I understand, the same credit that is before you today. So the important thing then, again, is that we are only responsible for water production. The region does have water transmission lines, which are like the wholesale lines that transmit water, and then the lower tier municipalities connect into those water transmission lines to create the distribution system. And as part of the development charges calculation, as part of the background, when the region formulated this development charges bylaw, the important thing is that water distribution was not part of the calculation, only the water production. And so when the $1.3 million development charge was incurred, it was to pay for the water production that the region was providing, in which the development is receiving. So it's ultimately staff's position that the proper party to respond to the credit application of the developer is the City of Kitchener and is not the region of Waterloo. Having said that, staff also make the observation that the development, if you were to look at the plan that was presented in the presentation, you'll see that part of the distribution line, the water service line that's being sought a credit is internal to the property. It is not within the road allowance. And that would be the position of the region would be, or the staff is that would be a cost that is solely on to the developer. And that the developer, if they wish to have minimized that cost, that they could have located the development at closer to the intersection between New Dundee Road and Pinnacle Drive to lessen the expense. But instead, they decided to put their development further down away, increasing the cost of that line. So those are the submissions of staff in that regard. I would emphasize that if you were to look at the presentation of the developer, that they had cited the case of Phantom Developments versus Toronto. Staff recognize that that case is out there. Whether staff agree with it or not is not for today, but accepting it for our purposes, if you were to look at the three-part test, the third part of the test is that the work must relate to a service to which the development charges bylaw relates. And the ultimate submission of staff is that the water distribution main, the connection, the extension that was incurred by this developer is not part of the region's development charges bylaw. So the position of staff is that the development charge was properly applied and that the complaint should be dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Colleagues, do we have any questions of either Mr. Doherty or Mr. Brooks at this time? Seeing none, I will ask now for closing remarks. Mr. Doherty or Mr. Dias, do you have any closing remarks? Or reply? Reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, we submit that the request is properly made and properly based under Section 38 of the Development Charges Act and ought to be allowed as it set out in our submissions.
Mr. Brooks, any closing replies on that?
No, Mr. Chair, other than to say that it's staff's position that the water main is the proper party to this application or complaint is the City of Kitchener. And I think the party, the developer, has a hearing date on the 13th of February in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, I want to remind the committee, if there are no further questions, that the committee may again dismiss the complaint or decide that there has been an incorrect determination or error in the application of the DC bylaw and then rectify that error. So I will ask colleagues to now vote on the recommendation. Oh, I guess there any discussion with regards to that? Any discussion? Seeing none. We will now vote on the recommendation in the report. Please use your yes or no button. Oh, so we do need to back up and have a mover and a seconder of the staff recommendation. Do I have a mover? It's Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your yes or no button to vote in eScribe with regards to the staff recommendation. And that is carried. Thank you. I will now move on to the consent agenda. If you wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, please indicate so now. is we will not take questions on consent items unless items are requested to be moved to the regular agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda will be dealt with in one motion. Are there any items that you wish to have removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, we will now vote to receive and approve the consent agenda items. Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Shantz. Please use your yes or no button to vote in eScrat. And that consent agenda is carried. Yeah, the next item will be 7.1. We'll now call on Craig Dyer, Commissioner of Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer, to introduce the report. Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I may, I would like to call upon our Director of Facilities and Fleet Management, Ellen McGagey, to provide a brief overview of the report before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig, and through you, Chair. The report this morning is to provide an update on the King Victoria Transit Hub project for the benefit of those who are newer to the project. It is a planned development at the corner of King and Victoria that will be a landmark development train station connecting the region to the Toronto Waterloo Region Innovation Corridor. The update today is primarily on the first phase of work, which is the region's work is to support the relocation of the platforms by Metrolinx. I will share my screen, which will give a little bit better view of the work that we're talking about here. So if you can confirm that you can see my screen.
We can.
Thank you. So apologies that it's not the most exciting view, but it does give a very good overview of all the work that we're talking about. So as part of phase one, just to orient us, this is King Street, this is Victoria Street. The sort of hockey stick shaped property here is the property that the region owns and will redevelop into the King Victoria Transit Hub. And this piece here is the rail corridor where Metrolinx will be relocating their platforms, which are currently at the VIA station. So as you can see, the platforms extend from King Street all the way over and across the current Duke Street. As part of the work that they will do to relocate the platform, they actually, during the entire period of construction, which will be from late in 2023 all the way through to 2027, they will be realigning the rail corridor, so from where my cursor is, and realigning so that they can do all of this work within. In order to do that, they have asked for permission to use the region's property at 100 Vic, which is just off the screen here, under Victoria, to provide access as well as activity. So there is a fairly significant grade difference. They will need to build a ramp and have an access road as well as storage of materials. They will be issuing a contract to a successful contractor in August of this year and will require that property for until at least 2027. If we are not able to provide a commitment to access that property as requested, it may result in increased costs of the project and or project delays. The work that the region will need to complete in order to support the relocation of the platforms is on the property at the corner of King and Victoria. It includes the bus loop, a parking area, which will include passenger pickup and drop-off, reorientation of Victoria Street to allow for passenger pickup and drop-off at the street, a ramp to provide access to a pedestrian bridge crossing over King Street to provide multi-use trail access to the site. So that is the extent of the phase one work. The timing of that work will be aligned with the Metrolinx construction activity and will be very much dependent on the activity that they will be doing. So there are periods of time during their construction that they will actually need the region's land in order to complete their work. And so the region's work will need to be slotted in. At this point in time, it appears that our work will be able to commence in spring of 2024, and that we'll aim for completion of both projects by the end of 2027. Other elements highlighted within the report, I'll stop sharing my screen. If I can. Stop sharing. Other elements highlighted within the report are that we are currently working on a memorandum of understanding with Metrolinx that speaks to the cost sharing agreement, and that will be finalized once we have more details on the schedule. So requesting authorization to enter into an agreement, cost sharing agreement with Metrolinx to the satisfaction of the region's solicitor, as well as an increase to the consulting fees for our consulting team, which is WZMH Architects, who have been the architects and design team for the project since the beginning of the project and have worked in various phases along the way. There's $450,000 increase requested in this report, which staff have reviewed and determined is appropriate for the work that's required. We have also completed a cost estimate for the full project, so for the phase 2 work as well. The overall cost estimate is currently at $130 million, which is an increase of $23.9 million from the 2020 estimate. And that cost increase is fully attributed to cost escalation in the current environment because there has actually been no additional design work done on that. It's just an update based on current situation. And regional staff have submitted those costs as part of an IKIP application in December and are awaiting further information from the province and the federal government. So if there are any questions, that's my update and introduction to the report.
Thank you. There are questions. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. You stated an August date. Was that just an August date of 2023 to do some preliminaries, or was that actually when they were going to start?
So the current understanding from Metrolinx is that they hope to begin late in 2023, and we believe that it will be in August that they will initiate that work. The initial work will be relocation of services, then the reconfiguration of the tracks, and then onwards to doing their track modifications and platform construction.
Thank you. The second part of the question is you talked about the increase in cost, about $23 million. Was that, will we be using contingency for that? Do we have enough contingency to cover it?
So that $23 million was part of the IKIP application. So the costs for the phase 1 work are covered in the current TPA that we have with the province. So it's $43 million in the current TPA with the province for the phase 1 work. The phase 2 of the project is currently on hold, awaiting additional funding, and that's part of the IKIP application that was submitted in December.
Thank you.
Councillor Urbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Harris, and thanks, Ms. McGaffey, for the presentation. I guess my questions are a little bit of a combination, both for yourself and for Mr. Regier. In terms of timing, the original timing for this project was scheduled for 2021. Is that correct to start, if I recall correctly?
We've had adjustments to the schedule, but certainly at one point in time we had hoped to begin in 2021. Yes.
Okay, and I guess the question for Mr. Regier is, in this world, sort of post-COVID world, the importance of place in terms of economic development attraction is key. And because people, quite frankly, increasingly in a world where they can work remotely can essentially can essentially go anywhere. And so making sure that we can continue to fulfill our vision in terms of the transit system, in terms of the notion of a multimodal hub. Wondering if you can talk a little bit about how important that is as we look to continue to attract investment throughout the region.
Yeah, through Chair Harris. We hear this continuously from the business community that the placemaking and particularly transit connectivity is a continued importance to the competitiveness of the regional economy. It's as council will recall, we've had advocacy from our business community for years on improved transit connectivity to and from the Toronto labour market area, and I don't think that those issues have changed at all. I think we're seeing a rebound of transit ridership now, and particularly as we move into a new policy environment with regard to greenhouse gases and so on, we're going to see increased transit utilization as part of the movement of labor across our economies.
Well, thank you for that. And I guess my follow-up to that for you, or perhaps someone else on staff may want to answer it. But we know that we're in the midst of building our business case for phase 2 of the LRT and so on. And I would gather that our case would be strengthened if we can demonstrate that we've completed or in the process of completing all of the things that were envisioned as part of phase 1. Can someone, I'm not sure who the right person is to comment on that?
Yeah, we'll ask either Ellen or Rod, whoever wants to. Oh, Mathieu, sorry.
Mathieu, I guess.
Or Mathieu.
Thank you. Yes, I think part of the business case will be predicated on very efficient transfer times between the LRT and the rail and both the intercity and the local bus routes that will be grouped into that center. So that's definitely, we know that every minute of transfer penalty, for example, can translate into, let's say, $1 million of social benefits. So that will definitely be part of the assumptions in the business case.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are the questions I have, Mr. Chair, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's a great project. I would be supportive looking at the costs going down the road, but I would also be hopeful that by 2027, we would have a GO train connection to the city of Cambridge in that same time period. And I think that's absolutely important. And it shouldn't be left on the sidelines or on the back burner. So my direct question is, with regards to cost, is what are we looking at as a predicted cost for the regional municipality of Waterloo in terms of this project?
I'll let Ellen, Rod, or Mathieu respond to that. Ellen?
I actually might hand that to Craig in terms of the overall
or
impact.
Craig. Mr. Dyer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not having the exact number in front of me, the cost of phase 2, which is the proposed hub at the corners of King and Victoria, is now in the range of $100 million. Council provided direction back in December to submit an application to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program transit stream. So we have done that, submitted that application just before the holidays, awaiting for a response from the ministry. If approved, that would secure 73% of the cost to be funded through the ISIP program. The remaining 27% would need to be financed by the region, and we would likely do that through the issuance of 20-year debentures. Hope that's helpful.
That's good, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I'm very hopeful that we'll see that. Thank you.
Councillor Solonen, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I have two questions. One, do we know kind of the anticipated return on investment we're looking at for this project and what it's going to bring to the region having this transit hub?
I'll let perhaps Mr. Dyer chime in on this one.
through the chair, I'd prefer to hand this off to Rod or Ellen, but I can give it a try. From a return on investment perspective, as we've stated in the report, this facility would be, a landmark facility within the city of Kitchener at the terminus of the Union Station to Kitchener, the Kitchener line. There will be, we anticipate that this would spur on additional development in that area and along Victoria Street in particular. That's probably the best I can do at this point. Perhaps my colleagues, Ms. McGahey or Mr. Regier, would like to respond. Mr. Regier.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair Harris. I think this is a key project inside of an integrated transit system, which includes the ION LRT, the complete reorganization of the GRT system to use the ION as a hub, as a spine to the system, and as a result of the investment of in that system, we've seen in excess of $3.2 billion in intensification, which is ongoing as we speak. In fact, I've just recently been apprised of new additional projects, intensification projects that are in the immediate transit station area of the hub, which are at a scale which we haven't seen in the region up to this point. So it's actually working extremely effectively as a catalyst for new investment. We've seen investments in the expansion of, for example, the Google Workplace, where they're growing, have been growing up to this point continuously, and that's and their location directly adjacent to the transit hub is not a mistake. It's a well-planned way of integrating them into the larger metropolitan labor market. So I think we're seeing direct benefits from this type of investment.
That's great, thank you. And if I may have a follow-up question, it's actually a separate topic, but are we anticipating disruptions to the current Metrolink services, getting current commuters in and out of the community with all this construction?
I'm not sure who wants to, Mathieu or Ellen? Ellen? Oh, Ellen's got her hand up. Ellen, over to you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So because they are looking to relocate the tracks during the construction, there may be a slight slowdown as they move through because the track speeds will be slower through that area. But other than that, the current station will remain in use, and the trains that flow through will be able to continue to travel through. So we don't anticipate a significant disruption.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Hunick.
I'm going to ask this question for the sake of exploration and not necessarily because I'm advocating this approach. I'm wondering, can you speak to the projected completion date and if there's any leeway built into that schedule, and what would be the impact if we waited a couple of years, for example, to invest in more pressing things based on budgetary concerns?
Ellen, I don't know if you want to respond to that one as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the schedule actually has experienced some significant delays over the last period of time. So right at the moment, we had been anticipating completion in late 2024, early 2025, based on Metrolinx looking more closely at what their construction schedule needed to be and some challenges that they've had around utility relocation and soil conditions. They're currently targeting a 2027 completion, which is significantly later than was originally anticipated. We are very much at their mercy in terms of the timing of this work. The parking lot and bus loop and ramp and bridge all are to support the relocation of the platform. So we really don't have the ability to dictate the timing, but need very much to have our pieces completed to coincide with the completion of the Metrolinx work.
And Mr. Dyer would like to also add to that.
Yes, and if I may, through the chair, the other thing that I would add is the initial work, the phase one work, as Ellen indicated in her earlier remarks, are fully covered through the transfer payment agreement that we have with the province. It's not till we move on to the actual hub facility itself that the region would be cost sharing. I hope that's helpful.
Councillor Hunek, you're good? All right. Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions. Exciting to see that this is happening. To me, it's a bit of the cherry being on top of the cake for the master transportation plan that we've been trying to develop with the ION. I think it's exciting. As we consider this hub, let's not forget the important link it's going to have to the airport for us as well, where it'll provide another connection for people to get back and forth. Early on, I recall that there was some conversation about a residential component to one of the phases. Is that a possibility, or where is that at?
Ellen, I'll leave that to you.
Thank you. So originally the project was anticipated to be delivered through a master developer. And so the master developer would have been required to produce mixed-use development on the site as well as the transportation infrastructure. When that was unsuccessful, the region made the decision to move forward with building the infrastructure pieces. So the phase one work and the phase two work that we've talked about here this morning. Any private development on the site would follow that. And so there would be the opportunity to develop the Rumpelfelt property. There also would be the ability to develop over top of the parking area and bus loop. And the expected approach would be to issue requests for proposals for that once construction is well underway or following construction for phase one and phase two. So certainly it remains part of the overall vision for the site, but not part of what the region would directly build.
So that'll be a couple of years away, and I hope as we anticipate potential residential there that we keep in mind the leadership that the region is trying to give in creating affordable housing, and we'll use all the tools we have like zoning and whatever just to create an inclusive residential area if housing does get built. Thank you.
I don't have any other questioners. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wolf. Well, who's left to go? If I can just see a show of hands. Councillor Wolf, you go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I can see how this hub directly benefits Kitchener with intensification, et cetera. And I know Cambridge residents have been very patient. We're waiting for GO, we're waiting for LRT, and our tax dollars, et cetera, have been contributing all the time. Can you explain a little further how this benefits the entire region, what we can say to the residents of Cambridge?
Mr. Regier, perhaps?
Through you, Chair Harris. Yeah, I think, as I was mentioning earlier, the hub is really only one piece of a fully integrated transit system that will serve the entire region of Waterloo. A preliminary service through the BRT down into Cambridge, ION BRT, and the vision that the region has for completing the stage 2 of the ION is already generating significant investment in intensification in Cambridge. We're seeing very significant projects being identified and actually in the construction process in Galt and on Highway 24. So I think the concept of this is a fully integrated regional system that serves knits all of the communities together, all of the cities together into a single urban labor market is already bringing benefits. And in the fullness of time, as we complete the phase 2 a business case and take that to funding partners, the success that we've had in stimulating investment by the private sector in the station areas of the system will be a credit for the funding of phase 2 in my opinion. So I think we are also exploring opportunities for the connection of Cambridge through the Fergus subdivision or the Fergus extension into the Metrolink system, and so that work is ongoing, and I can assure Councillor Wolf and Council that Cambridge is very much part of the planning for this larger system that we're working on.
Thank you.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I was just going to point out to colleagues that there is a cost of delay. And when we're in a partnership with Metrolinx, it's very important that we have and appear to have our ducks in a row. So I think moving forward with this motion is very important, knowing that we are on the docket of Metrolinx and projects, and we compete with other municipalities to keep that place in line. So I'm very supportive of both this motion and this project. It has been on the books for a very long time, and I do believe that there is region-wide benefit to this.
Councillor Verbanovic.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I'll use the opportunity to move the motion now, and I think many questions, good questions, particularly with the number of new councillors that we have around the horseshoe have been asked. But I think this project really speaks to the importance of creating that integrated transit system that links all the corners of our region together, as well as Councillor Erb said, the links to the airport. I think as we go forward, if we want to continue to see growth throughout our region in terms of things, particularly in the innovation space and so on, supporting those linkages between the Toronto-Waterloo Region Innovation Corridor is going to be key. And as Chair Redmond just indicated, there is a cost to waiting, and we're in the queue. We don't want to lose, number one, we don't want to lose our spot in the queue. Number two, governments change, and sometimes when governments change, they reprioritize priorities, and we don't want capital dollars that have been committed to us potentially being reallocated at a time when they're having increased pressures as well. So I think it is important that we signal our intention to see this moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Verbanovic moved. Do I have a seconder of the motion? Councillor James. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor McCabe. I'm going to go back to you before the vote. So Councillor McCabe, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to really add as well, through you, Chair Harris, that 100% I support this project. Happy to be the seconder on this because it has great benefits as well for the city of Waterloo, but as I see for the region as well. One of the things that I didn't hear mentioned that I just thought was important to add to the table to the discussion is the environmental benefits of this, right? Like rail and getting people out of cars and using this kind of system has an enormous impact that way as well. So I think that's really a return on investment and a benefit to the region that we also need to just keep in our minds as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor McCabe. So we do have the motion or the staff recommendation moved by Councillor Verbanovic, and I'm sorry, Councillor McCabe, I did grab Councillor James. I'm glad everyone's as keenly interested in this one to move it. So I will ask you all to use your yes or no buttons to vote in each scribe, please. Development and Legislative Services to introduce the report, item 712, Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony one-time funding request. Ms. Chamari Russell.
Thank you, Chair. So you have a report in front of you that's in response to a letter that was sent from the Symphony in December, as well as a delegation that they made in January, requesting one-time funding to support them through what's going to be a very difficult time post-COVID and moving into a time when visitor patterns have changed remarkably. They find that they have a gap in their normal cash flow patterns. So the current report recommends that to take no action on the request, and that's pretty much a summary of what you've got in front of you there.
Any questions? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to that the region actually does approve the additional grant request from the KW Symphony. Is this an appropriate time to note that?
Yeah. So
Okay,
there's
sorry,
no
I'm
motion.
early?
So
Okay, I'm early. All right.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay.
There is no actual motion on the floor. So
I can
there's
make
a
a
list of
motion.
speakers. So it would require a new motion that you could make and would need to be seconded. But perhaps I'll get through the speakers list and then we'll come
Sure.
back.
Okay,
If you want
thank
to make
you.
a motion. So
Rookie mistake.
Councillor Craig. There is no motion actually.
I have one in my mind. I'm just wondering, is my colleague going to move the motion to fund it? Is that what I'm understanding?
I believe that's what I'm hearing.
So I'm
yes.
going to second it. And I'll just give you my quick reasoning. I always find that the cultural community always is not treated as well as it could be in times of difficult circumstances. That happened down in Cambridge with Drayton Theatre. They never asked for money, but during the pandemic, they came to Cambridge Council, asked for about $180,000. The cultural and economic benefits of such enterprises as Drayton Theatre and the Symphony, I think, are very well known, and I think it's something we should support. My suggestion is, if you're concerned about funding, then take it from the Rate Stabilization Fund. It's essentially, and I'm sure Mr. Dyer is sorry he ever mentioned it, it's a slush fund that can be used at any time for specific projects or to carry us through to the next budget, et cetera, et cetera. You can take $100,000 out of that remaining funds, which is approximately $7 million, and it's going to have no impact on this year's budget at all. So that's my suggestion, and I'll listen to my colleagues. Thank you.
I'm going to move through the speakers list, and then I'll come back to a potential motion. So, Councillor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Councillor McCabe for bringing the motion forward. I'm not averse to the motion. In fact, potentially would support it. I guess my question, and perhaps Councillor McCabe might consider this, is that we put a motion on the floor that we do the 100,000, but in fact that we refer it to budget day. And the only reason I say that is because I do know that there will be some other delegations as I look through the list who are going to be coming with requests. I have to be frank, I'm concerned with some of the information that came to us in email around how grants are, some of the approaches that are being taken with respect to grants and messaging that's going out to certain cultural groups in the organization. I'll leave that debate and discussion for another day. But having said that, I think this is something that that we need to seriously think about, because these are critical investments for the quality of life of our region going forward. And so, as I said, I'm inclined to be supportive of the motion, but I think we need to look at it as part of that bigger picture. And so, if Councillor McCabe's not sort of open to including that referral in her motion, then I would be moving a referral separately.
I don't believe Mr. Lochner has would like to chime in.
Thank you, Chair. Just the last, I think each member of council's spoken to a few issues, so just so all council has complete information, the grant program came to the previous council and staff were directed to come back with a different approach. It came back last year and we were asked to come back again with a different approach, and that will be coming. Helen can confirm, I think, within a month, to the point made that there are other organizations coming. That is accurate. And just so council has that full context, you may wish to consider any motion in the context of the other organizations coming forward. We would encourage at the staff level to have that all go through the process around grants that council directed staff to work under, and that's coming back. I think just knowing that you always can move forward any motion, as you know, but I wouldn't want a motion to go forward without all of council knowing that there are other requests and we have the full grant program information coming to council. So I think it may be Councillor Urbanovic suggested perhaps that information come to council, and we're happy to bring that. It will be coming in the coming weeks.
Well, since you're responding to Mr. Lochner to my comment, to be clear, I think it needs to come as part of budget, and so if the thinking is that staff's report is going to come at a different time, I'm not prepared to. I don't think Councillor McCabe is suggesting that we would wait till then, and so I would be looking to deal with it no later than budget. I guess, to be frank, my concern is that in some of the dialogue that seems to be going on, organizations are being led to believe that council may be going in a certain direction with this. And that's concerning to me because that's not direction that council has given yet. There will be a report coming forward. But until that time, we have a process in place, and it will be ultimately council that will be making decisions around the investments that need to happen. And while we do that, I think it's also important that we consider that there are valued organizations in our community that need to continue to see support from us. And so in my mind, this isn't about taking away from some to give to others. It's about looking actually how to grow the pie and invest in the kind of vibrant, world-class community we always aspire to be.
Mr. Lochner.
Yeah, no quarrel with Councillor Urbanovic comments. Agree. I think we do, if that's the direction of council, and would like to receive clarity on that today, if that's the direction of council to bring it back. As part of the budget process, we can certainly do that. Regarding messaging going out, I too hear rumors. I can assure you, as Helen has previously confirmed, I suspect this is what we receive each year and what we received last year upon council's direction, that people are speculating or concerned about where this may go. So I would suggest that likely is happening. I can assure you, as Helen has done, that no communication has gone from council to community. We would never do that and would not do that until we have a decision from council. So I think that is in fact happening. I've heard those rumors in community as people express concern as to where this would go. And I think all the more reason, through you, Mr. Chair, that we should bring this back during this budget process, if that suits the rest of council.
Chair Redmond, I believe you.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I don't know that Councillor Urbanovic is looking for a seconder, but I too think deferring this to the budget process is really important. And this is not a value statement, because the package that was brought forward by this group, I have letters of support. So this is not in any way questioning the value of the Symphony. But this is a year of change, and those changes were dictated by the previous council. I have to tell you that how we fund community groups has been a topic of live conversation since 2014, when I rejoined this council as a regional councillor. So it's not an easy question to navigate, but I would also point out that we need clarity of message. In the last council, we put in $15 million looking at equity-seeking groups and how we could fund them, recognizing that for a very long time, our funding at the region felt a bit like a closed shop. And what that did was prevent new entrants into it. When there's change, you always have people that are looking at it and thinking, am I going to get less? And the reality is, groups were told that they couldn't assume that they were going to get previous year's funding this year. And I understand that we've come through a pandemic. It's been very difficult on a lot of groups. So I think being able to listen to all of the competing needs for finite dollars is really a smart thing to do at this juncture. And again, it's not a value statement in any individual group, but I would also tell you that for equity-seeking groups and people who are very loose organizations, they may not have the ability to present the kind of unified request and advocacy from the community that other groups do. So I think it's incumbent on us as the decision makers to consider all of those things. And I guess my last comment would be to Councillor Craig, and I learned a really long time ago that you never refer to any pot of money as a slush fund in politics.
So I'm going to ask Council if there are further questions of Helen to please do so, and then perhaps we'll move to one of our colleagues that would like to table a motion. So I've got Mr. Erb, Councillor Erb, you're on the docket next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I too think that this should be referred to budget and remind Council of the decision we made that that Chair Redmond has spoken to in, I think it was August of 22, as to how we look at grants differently. And I'm concerned with all the one-offs that we're dealing with around the table. And if you look at the agenda today for community services, staff, and this has no relationship to the Symphony, but it's just an example of where we had a request for funding from a specific group about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and staff have come back with, I think, 14 or 15 other organizations that also requested funding. And so I don't think we're doing any benefit to the community when we're responding to these one-off and not taking the whole thing in context. So I would prefer that we not deal with it now, and we try and adhere to the policy that Council approved back in 22.
Okay, Councillor Foxon.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to the report, and it talks about 15 years of giving to the Symphony. So did we not give, we gave in 22 as well, so 385,000, 385, so it's been about 385 all along. And they got, is that in the budget for this year, for 2023? Is the ask for 100,000 above the 385,000?
I'll let Mr. Dyer answer that question, clarify that.
So through the chair, the request for $100,000, as I understand it, is over and above any request that we might receive for funding in 2023.
So we're assuming the $385,725 plus $100,000.
So I would say, again, through the chair, I'm trying to think of the specific number. In the budget in 2023, we have an allocation for grants, which if I recall correctly, is about $80,000 lower than last year's allocation. The intent initially was that we would seek council approval of the overall amount of funding for grants as part of the budget, and then the allocation or distribution would happen subsequently.
Okay,
if it's council's wish to have that in a different order at a different time, then we're happy to meet that request.
Yeah, no, I was just assuming that it was $100,000 and that's all they were asking for, but this is on top. That's what I want to know. Thank you.
Councillor Craig, you're back on the list.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate, I don't have the background of the previous council, and I think the comments made about having, leaving this to budget in terms of looking at everything is quite appropriate. So I have no problem with that. And in terms of my use of language, of slush funds. We could call it a rainy day fund, okay? And I would like to point out it's raining, okay? And it's an appropriate place to go for some of the items we may wish to do this term, okay? I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I agree with the comments that have been said that it should be part of the budget process, but Mr. Dyer, you just said the budget is approving just a gross amount for grants, and then we'll get the report from Helen on how we want to distribute that, and then we'll make that decision. Is that, I just want to make sure that I understand the process and where that grant report is going before I make applications, decisions.
Mr. Dyer.
Through the chair, yes, I believe you have the process identified correctly. The one thing I would add is that because this is a request that's then over and above, dealing with this request as part of the budget would seem appropriate.
So that would add to that pot of money?
So it would add, through the chair, it would add to the pot of money, and the funding would be again, at the discretion of council. As we've said in the report, either funded through the 2023 property tax levy, or alternatively, there are some funds in the tax stabilization reserve that could be used.
So then that pot of money does have some kind of structure to it as to what's included in there to get to that bottom line?
Yes, so that's correct. As I believe as outlined in the report, there's a variety of grant streams that my colleague Helen could speak to much better than I could.
Helen?
Sure. Thanks very much, Chair. So the grant administration policy that Council approved back in August does recommend that grant funding be provided through formal grant programs. At the moment, the region of Waterloo has 6 formally approved grant programs that we administer grant funding through. Not all of them are cultural. We have another one that will be coming very shortly for other cultural organizations. Currently, we have the Key Cultural Institutions Grant Program that is in existence, approved by Council, and that is the one that we use to approve grant funding to the Symphony. So yes, as part of the grant policy as well, it is up to Council to both approve those guidelines to ensure that they have programs that they understand what they're doing with, but also to approve the budgets for those grant programs. And there's also within that policy a procedure, for how do we approve one-time grant funding requests, and that's currently what we're going through at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Verbanovic.
Thanks very much. So I just want to be clear, Mr. Dyer, did I hear that you said that the overall grant budget has been reduced from last year to this year in staff's recommendation?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. And we have this item as part of our presentation material for Budget Committee tomorrow.
Okay, so I think that's going to be a rather vibrant conversation, I would anticipate. Because that, I just want to flag today, is a very, very deep concern for me. And I think we need to be clear, as has been pointed out by Councillor Craig. There was some direction that was set last August. This is a different council. This council may decide to go in a different direction. I think there is some value to putting some structure to things, but I think we also need to be very careful that in doing so, we're not starting to jeopardize existing organizations, because if that's the path that we're going, we'll, I think, very quickly find some pretty negative community reaction around that going forward. And so I really urge us, as this debate continues in the coming weeks, we pay careful and close attention to it.
I believe Mr. Lochner would like to add some comments.
Yeah, this is the
just to council, this is the whole point of bringing the topic tomorrow in terms of that robust discussion. I take from council it would be important for us to go back to the direction last year, especially given the new members of council, so that we educate you in what the direction was. I can assure council that staff, I think we said this last budget meeting as well, staff are not taking any action. Staff are not moving forward ahead of council. Staff are bringing forward information, and we're at your service. Council's direction, if you'd like to add more funds to that, if you'd like to shift the funds, if you'd like to change the policy and direction that was set by the previous council in August, we're at your pleasure as always. So really look forward to that conversation tomorrow.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I took a quick look, and I want to thank Mr. Dyer for the reserve report. We have millions of dollars in various reserves that are there, and I think the discussion on reserves tomorrow is going to identify that there's opportunities to support something like this, not just from the specific reserve, but from a variety of other reserves that we as council can say, $100,000 from this particular reserve. I saw one called working funds, didn't see what the particular definition of that was. And we have lots of opportunities to support this. And yeah, I'm glad that we're pushing this over. We shouldn't make a decision on this. There are funds there available to support institutions like this. And I think it's an important investment to be made. And we have that opportunity. We have a lot of funds in a variety of reserves, which are reserves that we determine what can be done. And these are funds of our community. And we can determine what has to be done with respect to those funds. So there are lots of opportunities there. And so I look forward to that further discussion tomorrow. Thank you.
Perhaps I'll ask Mr. Dyer to respond to some of the specifics, or maybe broaden and enlighten council on the reserves and policy perhaps that's required. Mr. Dyer.
Thank you. And through the chair, I would say I can certainly provide more information as needed when we discuss reserves tomorrow. I think my one comment for council today would be to ground your decision making in good public policy. The presence of money in a reserve, from a staff perspective, is secondary to, is this a good public policy decision to make? So I would encourage you to keep that in mind as you make your decisions. Staff can provide advice as to our reserves and reserve funds and their current use and their future use. And as Councillor Deutschmann has correctly said, the use of reserves is entirely at the discretion of council. Thank you.
So we have perhaps a couple options. One, to either refer the report to the budget day. There is no motion right now on the table, so perhaps over to you, Councillor McCabe, if you want to either chime in further or move something to council.
I'm happy to, having listened to the various discussion through you, Chair Harris, I'm happy to hold this over till tomorrow's discussion. Do you need me to make a motion to that effect?
We will, yes.
Okay. Sorry. Did you have something else?
No, I was just clarifying perhaps the dates as to which this would be heard, but it could be tomorrow. So
I heard that it would be part of the discussion tomorrow, given that that's when the discussion around the grants fund would be. Well, what's wrong with tomorrow? That tomorrow would be a place to have it, because we're also going to have the discussion about the amount of money that's in that fund.
Okay, I know that.
But I'm open to it. I'm open to it as long as we have the, pardon? Okay.
Councillor Benedict, when you want to chime in to help.
Maybe I can make a suggestion, Councillor McCabe. I think your motion was that we do the 100,000, so that maybe you might consider making your motion that we do the 100,000, or that we refer the idea of the $100,000 request in a positive way to budget day on the 22nd.
Okay. That works for me if clerks capture.
So let's get that together. Give us a second here, and then we'll want to read it out for everyone. So when that's ready, we'll do that. We are going to get it up on the screen. I don't know if Councillor McCabe, you want to have a look at that?
I think we should actually amend that to say that the region of Waterloo discuss the request for one-time funding in the amount. Refer, yeah. For discuss, yeah.
Not from a specific program.
That's true, yeah, not maybe from the specific program either, because in case it needs to come from the tax stabilization, yeah. And that this be, yeah, that works.
Do we want to leave the date out or leave?
No, we want to have it as part of this budget process.
No, that's the budget day, that works.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so if Councillor McCabe and Councillor Verbenovic are good with this, we'll read the actual motion out for everyone to hear. That the Regional Municipality of Waterloo refer the request for one-time funding in the amount of $100,000 for the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Strategic Planning and Budget Committee on February the 22nd, 2023. Councillor McCabe, Councillor Verbenovic are good with this? So we'll now take a vote. We'll get that e-scribe voting module up. And when it's up, I'll ask that you either vote yes or no in eScribe. And that is carried. All right. Item 7.2. Oh, sorry, Councillor Craig.
Just a very quick question, and I'm trying to understand the process here. Any kind of amendments that I wish to make or concerns I wish to bring to the table for financing out of the budget, is it the 22nd we're doing this, or is it tomorrow we're doing part of this?
Mr. Dyer.
Through the chair, I excuse me, I think the answer is that it depends.
Good answer.
Well, I'm glad I'm here.
And I'll try this, and I may be corrected by the clerk. I think if there are motions relating to the items that are part of the agenda for tomorrow, then any of those motions can come forward as part of tomorrow's discussion. Otherwise, if that's not the case, then I think that February 22nd would be the most appropriate time for that to happen.
That clarifies it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll move on to item 7.2, strategic focus, healthy, safe, and inclusive communities. We'll call on Mr. Dyer to introduce the report. Mr. Dyer.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, we have a report for committee's consideration with respect to the funding request from the All Saints Anglican Church. You may recall the representatives from the church were here back in December making a request for a grant in the amount of $288,441. That grant amount is the equivalent of the amount of development charges that were paid for the construction of the community center. I would clarify that the request is not for a waiver or a deferral of development charges. It's a request for a grant in the amount of the development charges that were paid. The staff recommendation, as set out in the report, is to take no action on the request for a couple of reasons. One is, I think we would say that there's no direct connection with regional service provision. The region does not provide funding or deliver a community center type service. There isn't a provision for this in the budget, and although it's not a request for deferral of or a waiver of development charges, Council has had a long history of assessing development charges to nonprofit organizations over the years. We've included a list of those organizations that have paid development charges for their proposed developments in accordance with our bylaw. So staff recommendation is for no action. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Dyer? No, seeing no questions, I will ask for a mover and a seconder on the staff recommendation in the report. Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Please use your yes or no button to vote in eScribe, please. And that appears to be carried. I would like to now call on Rod Regier, Commissioner of Planning, Development and Legislative Services, to introduce the next report, camera-based traffic enforcement programs and processing administration. Mr. Regier.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Harris. And I'd like to thank Teresa Mendler and Patty McCauley for pulling together this report, which outlines our approach, our recommended approach to managing provincial offences that are related to the camera-based system of monitoring our traffic. And Mathieu Gutsky can participate in support me in the delivery of this particular report. As you know, the Region of Waterloo is responsible for the administration of the provincial offences courts, and that's a very busy program. We split it. We have two divisions responsible for that. One is our legal services team, which has our prosecutions team reporting to the regional solicitor and director of legal services. The other is our provincial offences courts administration, which is reporting through Patty McCauley to our regional clerk. And this is a bit of a church and state type of arrangement designed to protect the integrity of the court system. The court is extremely busy. We currently have a backlog of about 3,500 cases, which are in the adjudication system. The camera-based offences program generates a significant number of offences, and particularly automated speed enforcement has the potential to generate a very, very significant amount of offences, which have the potential to overwhelm the court system. Right now, we're managing fine given the current number of cameras that we're operating, but we are proposing to increase the number of cameras operating in the region of Waterloo significantly through this program, and the essence of this report is to receive direction to proceed with the development of an adjudicated case management system in order to streamline the process. The province created provisions the last year to allow us to do this, and we think it's a very efficient way of managing the court, the provincial offences court system related to traffic offences for camera-based offences that will come through the POA system. So, in addition, staff are asking for direction to proceed with the development of a plan to increase the number of cameras that will be operating through the automated speed enforcement system. At the present time, we've been planning to increase from the current number of cameras to 32 over the course of the next 2 years. We're asking for direction to increase that to 32 sites by the end of this year. And we're also asking for direction to come back to you with a roadmap for a rapid implementation of the ASC program to include all the school sites in the region of Waterloo. I believe it's approximately 170 sites across the region. Now, that report will be coming back over the in the near future. So that's the essence of the direction that we're requesting at this point.
Thank you, Mr. McGeer. Questions of Councillor Foxton.
Just a comment, Chair. I think it's a good idea, Rod. You know that a group of mayors, the minister approached a group of mayors and asked that I join with them to talk about speeding in our municipalities. And one of the things that was suggested by a judge was that we go for the automatic penalty system, the administrative penalty system. It frees up court time. It's dealt with. So it's same as getting a parking ticket. You get a parking ticket, you have to pay it. You don't get to really go to court, or very seldom do you. And this is a similar type thing, and the process is handled in-house. It's a lot faster, cheaper, economical. And the mayors of several municipalities are looking into this with the ministry, and I think it's the way the region should go with this. We've been talked about being bogged down in courts over cases, so I think this is the right move. Thank you.
Councillor Nowak.
Just following up on Councillor Foxton, has there been some discussion or any discussion with LAS with regard to this? Because you know that there is a program in place that they are working on. Are we working with them in any degree? And I have a follow-up as well.
Yes, through you, Chair Harris. Ms. Mendler can respond about the nature of the conversation we've had with LAS, but certainly we've had conversations with LAS, and we'll bring forward any information that'll be included as part of the analysis that we'll be doing over the next couple of months.
Good morning, Ms. Mendler.
Morning,
would
thanks.
you like to respond?
Thanks to the chair. Just a supplementary to Commissioner Rogier there. There are a number of programs in place in terms of processing capacity. So as it says in the report, we currently are a municipality that is an initial partner in the City of Toronto's Joint Processing Centre. So the region of Waterloo uses the City of Toronto's JPC, Joint Processing Centre. We do have the capacity there to manage this program under the Provincial Offences Court currently. We also have confirmation with them that they can manage up to the maximum amount that we can manage here in this year, 2023, which is 30,000 charges. We are aware that should the program grow, we will need more processing. So there are a number of municipalities that are looking at their own processing centers. Staff believe that that is something we should start looking at now. We understand it could take up to 2 years to put that in place, so we would like to start looking at that now, as well as other programs that other municipalities are looking at. Thank you.
If I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Nowak.
So just for your information, we have, I don't have the gentleman's name, but the fellow from LAS that is overseeing the project is coming to our council tonight to make a presentation. So if you want to join in on YouTube, you can hear what he may have to say to the municipalities. The other question I have, and it really, I would imagine Steve would be able to answer this, because I'm just a little bit confused as to a school zone as opposed to a community safety zone. And what I'm hoping to see somewhere down the line is that this program can be extended to community safety zones. And I'd like to know what the criteria for that community safety zone would be to identify it as. So I'm thinking of areas entering the villages and exiting the villages. Those are the areas that are causing the greatest concern. I had a phone call yesterday. I get a phone call on a regular basis from a number of people. And, you know, I see that maybe something won't be definitive until the fall, and I think that's way too long. I'd really like to see something happen with regard to speed enforcement in the rural areas much, much sooner. I'll leave that with you.
Mr. Regier.
I'll ask Mr. Getsky to respond.
Thank you for your question. So the focus up to now has been really on school zones, because that was really the priority for speed reduction. But the community safety zones can be part of the scope of work as well. I think, so today, you know, I would say the number of sites is quite limited. I think we were looking for that expansion to more school zones because as we know, there is a bit of a long waiting list of schools that are not covered by speed cameras today. There was a methodology for prioritization that had been established a few years ago. I think it's based on both kind of operating speeds, the presence of sidewalks, and the physical restrictions to speed that really help to manage the effective speed, pedestrian volumes, and in school zones we were looking at school types. So there was a prioritization methodology developed for schools, and we can certainly look at expanding it to community safety zones if this is council's direction.
If I may, I would ask staff to take that direction. I think it's something that we should be looking at, and it maybe would address some of the areas entering into the into the villages. So do you need a motion for that? I haven't prepared one, but if you would need a motion for that, I'm certainly sure my rural colleagues would be happy to support that. Or do you want direction?
Sorry, Mr. Lochner.
Thanks.
Respond.
Mathieu and I are back and forth, Councillor Noy. So just to clarify, I know that we haven't had a chance to speak to all of our CL colleagues and all of the rural councillors in their capacity of mayors. But the conversation that I did have with Councillor Shantz and also with Councillor Novak and your CAOs was the concept of we need to get down to brass tacks on the issue of speeding in the rural areas, and some very practical workshops, which I believe Mathieu has referred to, with that maybe the March-April timeline, just given budget in February to start those. I think it's important that we get direction on that from council. I don't know the motion's necessary, but I think a direction would be very helpful. I think this issue's gone on for a long time, and if that's supported by the rural members of council, we certainly would welcome direction.
Okay, so I would do a motion, but I'm going to need the clerk to help me put something together. And really, it involves having staff investigate the potential to use the ASE units in community safety zones, and how those community safety zones would be defined, how they would be identified. I think that's a big part of this.
Perhaps I think I'm getting some counsel from our clerk that we could add to the existing motion to this. Mr. Lochner.
Sorry to clarify, Chair. I was just referring to direction. So if that's easier for the clerk and suitable to council, we're happy to take that part as direction, and just the elements of the components that the councillors are speaking to, we can include that in direction rather than trying to word a motion.
Okay. I do have a speakers list on the actual report itself, so I don't know if we want to continue with those folks that have questions, and then we'll circle back at the end on potentially the direction to staff on Councillor Nowak's request. So, Councillor Verbanovic.
Thank you. And just as a first follow-up to Councillor Nowak's question, so because my understanding initially was that it was only red light cameras and school zones. So, Mathieu, are you saying that those locally designated safety zones are eligible?
Yeah. Yes.
Because that wasn't my understanding.
Mathieu.
Yes, and I can pass it to Steve, who knows the details, but community safety zones are eligible, although direction given by council and previously in the implementation of the program was to focus on school zones and red light cameras.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I guess my question is with respect to the developing our own processing center, because it is something that I asked about to come back for budget, but I don't see any reference in this report with respect to the costs associated with that. Ms. Mendler, you mentioned the timing might be upwards of 2 years. I guess I'm wondering when we can expect to see something more substantive, because that's something actually I'd like to see direction be given. It essentially is self-funding in terms of the investments that are needed. And just to put things in comparison, City of Toronto, and granted they're 5 times the size of our region, just put in another 25 cameras. They now have 75 cameras in their city that they move around every 6 months. We've got one, or is it two cameras that we move around our 16 locations. Like the JPC is not meeting our needs right now. I mean, it's doing the very, very basic. And so I really want to understand the timing and the cost of fast-tracking this so that we can give that direction. So when might we get a report on that? Will it be for Budget Day on the 22nd as was requested?
Through you.
Yep, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Harris. What we're proposing to do is bring back a full report, which would outline a roadmap to dealing with the volume of offenses that we'd be proposing that would be anticipated. That's not possible to deliver by Budget Day. I think that we're talking about a very significant corporate capacity to establish. And it'll take us some time to put together a full review of the implications for Council's consideration. I think we're talking about bringing this back in the next couple of months. April, I'm looking at my colleagues here to see whether that's possible. So that would include both a costing and a implementation analysis for Council's consideration.
And so if we were to do that at that time and not deal with it at budget time, Mr. Dyer, because this would potentially be self-funding, is that something that we can deal with reasonably well mid-year?
Mr. Gare?
Mr. Dyer? So through the chair, I would say a couple of things. The first would be, I don't think that we've done sufficient work at this point to understand the cost and revenue impacts, but that is obviously something that we'll be doing subsequent to approval of the budget. In terms of making decisions in year, it's, council always has the discretion to pass recommendations to put projects in place, to change levels of service. We'll, if that's the direction, we'll provide recommendations as to how to fund any in-year costs. It's not clear to me at all at this point what level of expenditure might be needed in 2023. And certainly we'll provide the necessary background so that council understands the impacts on 2024 and future budgets.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, at the appropriate time, I'm prepared to move the recommendation, but I would actually add a section E that staff report back by second quarter of 2023 with a plan to potentially expand this program, including details of what it would take for us to, and clerks can massage the wording, to create our own joint operating, joint processing center, and to fund it.
Okay. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, and thank you to my colleagues for their comments. I agree with all that's been said so far. I do have a question before I make a couple of comments, and that is, I think Councillor Nowak asked, and I would like to know, how do we create a community safety zone? Is that something that the area municipality does, or is that something that the region does, and how do we create that zone?
Mr. Schilling.
Through you, Chair Harris. So there is a regulation under the Highway Traffic Act that is very prescriptive in how a community safety zone is created. Province can prescribe the types of zones possible, so it has indicated that schools are eligible for designation as community safety zones. There's speculation that the province may choose to expand that to say, for example, long-term care homes and other kind of sensitive areas in the community. There is another way that community safety zone can be designated. We talked a little bit about it. This is, again, under the regulation under the Highway Traffic Act. So a local municipality can designate a community safety zone if it's of the opinion that there's a significant safety concern regarding a roadway under its jurisdiction. So if a local municipality wanted to designate, it would have to presumably do some background work and study, consult with staff, and then do so by way of a bylaw, which would designate that as and the bylaw would require signage, et cetera, to designate that area as a community safety zone.
So to follow up on that, most of the roads coming in and out of our settlements are regional roads. Which municipality would have to designate that? If we wanted to say the entry to our towns should be community safety zones.
So the government having jurisdiction over the highway has the authority to designate. The province designates its own highways, so you probably traveling through the province on provincial roads, you'll see small community areas where they're provincially designated and there's a bylaw that, or there's a regulation for the province. Similarly, region and other municipalities designate under bylaw.
So our entrances and our entrances to our towns are pretty much regulated by the region then, and we would have to come to this body to get that designation. Okay, thank you. If I could just have a couple of minutes to make a couple comments. I mean, we've spent a considerable amount of time already around this particular table talking about transportation, active transportation, how we move people in and out of the region and through the region. We've talked about the transit hub just today. We've talked about the LRT. In the rural areas, we move people by cars. Our active transportation is walking and cycling. Many of our towns have no active transportation pathways, and it's very difficult to get them. So the importance for us is when we have these zones coming through our towns and people aren't slowing down, it's not safe for our residents. It's a residential area. And we really need to deal with this. We've been waiting for a long time. We've been very patient on all these other issues and very supportive. And right now, we need to deal with this in our rural areas, and we can't keep putting it off. We've been putting it off and putting it off. I was hoping the report in this quarter would deal with some concrete recommendation, and I don't see one. Automatic speed zones would deal with that, but I don't want to wait 3 years, 4 years for that. Those are my comments.
Okay, Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Councillor Shantz, I think tomorrow will be an interesting conversation because there's a Safe Roads presentation that's going to have a lot of comments about speeding and all sorts of things that I think will be very informative. Yeah, very informative, right along with the important topic that you're talking about, for sure. Just on this, though, it just to me has the impression of moving at a glacial pace. And every election, the number one topic or one of the top 3 or 4 topics is speeding in our community. And not just in school zones, not just in community safety zones, but in all streets. And I'm getting the impression that one of the biggest issues about expanding the number of cameras is the back office issue, the being able to process. It's sort of 2 parts. We've got the first part where Mr. Schelling is getting the adjudicative piece taken care of for those people that want to dispute the tickets. But we have a big issue about administering. And if we add more cameras, then it's tens of thousands of more tickets, which is a bit of a sad commentary because the more cameras you add, the more people you're catching speeding, right? I mean, this is a big issue. So rather than maybe, and I appreciate we want to look at building it ourselves, I think we should closely look at what Councillor Nowak and Councillor Foxton are telling us about third-party providers. And we should be looking at, in this motion, it should include that we will review what third-party providers are able to do because they have the back office set up. They're ready to deal with the tickets. We just want speeding reduced in our community. We don't need to build the best system to process tickets. We need to get moving to get speeding down in our community. And that's what we need to do. And if third-party providers can do it now, let's look at it. Let's have some of them come in, bring them in so they can talk to us because clearly Councillor Foxton and Councillor Nowak, and I'm not sure if Councillor Shantz and Councillor Sloan had an opportunity to see these people at the Roma or what have you, but clearly they were impressed with what they saw. They've been around a long time. They know what we need in our community, and they say they're ready to go. So let's get ready to go on this. This is moving too slow. And in this motion itself, the 4 points, I hear, the suggestion that we're going to 32 sites. But that's not 32 cameras, and the conversation seems to get conflated between sites and cameras. 32 sites means we're moving 2 cameras around to 32 sites. That's not sufficient. That's not safe for our community. We have to move faster on this. And I would move, in addition to Councillor Verbanovic's amendment, that we also investigate third-party providers with respect to this process as well.
Mr. Lochner.
Yeah, thank you on that point. Thank you, Councillor Deutschman. We certainly agree. Given we're in open, I will talk generically. We have spoken with third-party providers in the province directly, and in follow-up to some of the comments today, they have indicated to us that they are not ready. We are on the lists of these third-party providers and have waved our hand saying we're very interested, as we've heard from this council. And this is something that we are challenging them on. We can't hear from providers that they're ready. And then when we go to ask or enter into agreements, here they're not ready. So if you'll indulge me, we'll bring some additional information back on that, but I can assure you we're having direct conversations and would completely support that addition if that's council's wish. And my preference would be to bring back some additional information on that particular matter.
Thank you for that. I would move that be an amendment to the recommendation that third-party vendors be investigated as well and report back to council.
Okay, we'll add that. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Harris. Councillor Shantz and Councillor Deutschman have really taken most of what I wanted to say, so I fully support what they have said. My question is, I guess 2 questions. It seems we do need to move faster, so why is 32 the number that we're looking at instead of, like I could use 32, I could use more than 32 in Waterloo, right? Like, I don't know how many I could use, but certainly more than 32 so can we increase that number how significantly can we increase that number with actual cameras in them? Sorry, I'm just drawing a blank here. Oh, and do we have to go through the whole community safety zone process? Like, do we have to? Why do we have to? Why can't we just say, like Fisher Hallman, people speed on it from one end of it to the other, right? We know that. Why would we have to have a study about it? University Avenue, we know people speed on that from one end of it to the other. Like, pick a road. Why would we have to take that amount of time to go through identifying a community safety zone? Thank you.
Mr. Schelling.
Sure, through you, Chair Harris. So, as I mentioned, it's a very easy matter to set up a site on a school zone, because those are designated under regulation of the Highway Traffic Act. So I think, as the report mentions, there are approximately 170 schools in the region writ large. It's a matter of choosing sites and having the necessary capacity, both in cameras, et cetera, to bring that online. outside of a school zone currently, and it's prescriptive under the Highway Traffic Act. So outside of a school zone, as I mentioned, the process is the jurisdiction, or the government having jurisdiction over the roadway, has to act to designate that area as a community safety zone. So if it's a provincial road, province makes a regulation under the Highway Traffic Act. The regional road, region makes a bylaw, and there has to be. There's no mechanism other than that regulation making or bylaw making authority to do that. So it has to come to council for that determination.
Is it possible to, like, why would we have that? Okay, if we actually have to go that route, is there a way to do it almost like a blanket bylaw, right? Like our entire community, whether you live in Wellesley or you live in New Hamburg or you live in Waterloo, we want our entire region of Waterloo to be a safe community. So is there a way to just do it as a blanket bylaw rather than piecemealing it?
Again, through you, Chair Harris, we can certainly take that away. That may very well be the case, but we'll take that away, and if we can, report back to you on that piece.
Mr. Chair, point of clarification. I just listening to the debate, it seems like there's a conflation here. We're not saying that these cameras can only go in community safety zones, are we? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
They can only go in community safety zones?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we do have a speakers list. Councilor McCabe, you're done?
Yeah, and just my other question was, how many can we do? Why would we limit it to 32 if we're... So you can take that back and include it in the report. I mean, I actually, sorry. Can we add to the recommendation that we utilize as many as many of these installations with cameras, many more than 32? Like, be really aggressive.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Through the chair, just for information, the cap or the order of magnitude of getting to 32, or basically a factor 2 or 3 compared to today, is really capped by our capacity to process a number of offenses. So I think beyond that, it is that question of what's on the critical path first is that administrative processing system. So for example, if we wanted to multiply by 10 the number of cameras, or by 20, or that requires that administrative processing system, and then the next step is the capacity to that joint processing center. So these are kind of thresholds that cap our ability to speed up beyond the definition of the zones that Jeff Schelling talked about.
Okay, well, I guess just to capture the urgency then with which I think I can hopefully speak collectively, that the urgency with which we want more cameras and actual cameras installed as quickly as possible. And sorry, my one other final thought is just on the procurement side of it. We have a lot of amazing talent in our local tech community, so I don't know if there's some way that we can include them, or if they're already included in this potential procurement process. But I think that might be worth a conversation with someone at Communitech or some other organizations locally around that, maybe Myovision or something like that.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious why the cost of the cameras doesn't come out of the police budget, since we would be able to reduce the number of officers for speeding enforcement. So just curious.
I'm gonna, it's a comment. Councillor Leggett. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before I make my comments and then my question, I just want to make note that Mayor McCabe did not call first dibs on all the extra cameras. So I want it out there that I'm calling first dibs for Cambridge on the cameras. That's public now. So when we talk about making the community all a safety zone, and then I look at the school zones, what defines a school zone and the streets within that school zone? Because it seems to me there only tend to be the streets in front of a school. we had 2 children hit at Central Public School in the last couple of years on the street, so we've had to look at reducing the speed on the other streets next to the school. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking parents come from all over, people go to work to and from home from all the different streets around a school. So are they included in a school zone, and is there an option of putting cameras on those other streets as well when we look at the increased number of cameras? Is there a defined statement of school zones?
Mr. Matthew.
Through the chair, so there is a definition in the Highway Traffic Act that's somewhat restrictive of school zones, but maybe I'll defer to Steve. I don't know if you want to bring some more details on this, but my understanding is it is restricted to the frontage of the school, and there's a limit to the expansion of the school zone in terms of catchment around the school.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Both children were not hit on the street in front of the school. They were hit on the side streets near the school. So can it be a direction to staff to accommodate my questions within the report coming forward later? Please, rather than a motion, just a direction on that.
Mr. Vanderkeer, I believe you want to chime in on this, perhaps?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, as it has been said already, the definition of a school zone is very tightly described in the Highway Traffic Act. It has to be on the road where the school has frontage and an access, and it's only so many meters within the property line of the school property. However, some other municipalities, I believe Toronto has been doing this, is rather than using school zones, they are using a community safety zone defined along that school frontage to give a little bit more flexibility in order to define the zone where the automated speed enforcement could be placed. They're still applying them at schools, but they're using the community safety zone approach to provide, like I said, a bit more flexibility in how they're defined, maybe creating a bit of a longer space along that frontage road, or it could be a side. It could be a road where there's a pedestrian access from the school and not a vehicular access. So the community safety zone approach does provide some flexibility, and staff have been considering doing that here in the region, because there are a few schools where they wouldn't strictly meet the requirements of a school zone on the regional road, but there could be a way using a community safety zone to also put in a zone where automated speed enforcement could go. So that's a very prudent use of the community safety zone approach at schools. To expand it to other roads where there are no schools is certainly at the discretion of council, but then it will require staff to look at some sort of a way of prioritizing locations similar to the way the schools have been prioritized, because obviously the program can't be put on every single street, at very frequent intervals. To look at a way of prioritizing, and that's fine. We're happy to do that, but a good first step might be to use the community safety zone approach to provide some more flexibility at existing schools.
Okay, thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to see that coming forward in any reports to council on those options of doing that. If we're also looking at making the entire region a community safety zone, I really would like to drill down on those areas around the schools to make them community safety zones versus just straight school zones. Thank you.
Councillor Solomon.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm really loving the discussion going on, especially all of the rural mention that's being noted. As we know, fatalities on roadways tend to happen out in the rural areas, and it's mainly due to speeding. I would just ask, and I don't know if it would be to add to the direction that Councillor Nowak was asking about, but that we look not at this as a silo, like we're only looking at this as in this discussion, it certainly sounds like this is the only solution to speeding, and it's not. And I would really ask, that we bring police services into the conversation. Again, in rural areas, some of if we can't make the entire municipality a safety zone, there are roads that we have serious speeding problems but aren't necessarily residential, so we need to be looking at other solutions. Also, when we're redoing roads, and I know I've already spoken with my municipality about it, but regionally, when we're redoing roads, could we look at actual measures to design them in a way that we are reducing people's behaviors to want to speed? A lot of the issues, again, in the rural areas is that the road, you feel comfortable going 80 even though it might be a 40. And that's in road design. So if we could add that to Mayor Nowak's, I get that's not an immediate impact, but as we're doing that, I think we really need to be looking big picture on how we can change drivers' behaviors, including using speed cameras, but in a variety of other ways.
Okay, Councillor Hunick.
I'm going to try to speak with my mask on, so if I'm incomprehensible, please let me know. I think given the issues that have been noted around speed levels in the rural townships, as well as the minimal police presence there, I think we really need to prioritize that. And I think even despite whether it's a safety zone or not, speeding is illegal, period. And so I'm not sure why enforcing that is an issue. There was, oh yes, regarding Councillor Deutschman's comment, I think it would be wise to look at a both and approach. So yes, developing our own facility in the long term, in the very short term, immediate future, partnering with existing prosecuting facilities.
I don't know if that's got that as well. Mr. Lochner. Oh, okay. Yeah. There's a couple. We have a couple more folks that have asked for questions. So I thought it was just a comment. We'll move on to Councillor Foxton.
Thank you. Just some information. So the group that we met with the ministers, one of the things we're asking for is community signage. Right now, under provincial legislation, it says, number one, it has to be a safety zone, and number two, you have to sign every location that has the administrative thing. We're going to ask for community signage, so when you enter our village, our township, it says our roads are automatic speeding enforced. That's one of the things we're approaching the ministry for. We're asking that safety zones be removed. And I'll tell you why, because it's mandated that it has to be a community safety zone to do speeding. It also doubles the fine, and so it makes a whole process encumbered. We just want no speeding in our communities. So we're asking that that be removed, and we're working on the administrative penalties, just as it's brought here today, and also with the people that provide the services. What we found out is that they install all the equipment, and they do the finding and everything, and we get a percentage of the profit, a small percentage. We wanted to prove to the province that this wasn't a money grab, that this was pure safety. And though any funds that we made would automatically be turned back into the program, but it was for slowing people down. And just another thing I would like to highlight for council is that Matthew's report today on road construction and dealing with speed is excellent. Actually, I've asked him to send a separate copy so I can present it to my council, and it would answer a lot of your questions, Natasha, because it's a great report. Not that I'm plugging you, Matthew.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I guess I would just observe that we have, I think, violent consensus that what we need is a faster, more ambitious report coming back, and appreciate the work that's been done, but I'm certainly hearing that resonate throughout all of the region. And I would have to say, would hate to see that we're going to play off rural versus urban. I think there's need everywhere. So look forward to that report that covers all of those eventualities.
So Mr. Lochner.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good segue. So, Chair, would it be appropriate if we just took a few minute break so that I want to make sure that between the potentially amended motion today and what's coming tomorrow, that we capture Council's wishes and direction. And if it's possible to take just a few minute break, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. That was exactly the next item of business. We're going to take 15 minutes and we'll have the clerk staff convene with folks to make sure we've got, I think, everyone's comments reflected in the proposed motions. So 12 o'clock we'll resume and come back on this matter. Thank you. I believe we have an amended motion to the staff report that we'll put up on the screen. And I will we'll let everyone have a look at it, but I will read the amended portions of the motion, if that's okay. I don't know. Councillor Hunek, is she on her return?
She's taking a personal break. Like she'll be here.
Okay, so do you want to? Bruce, did you want to say a few things? Yeah, let's do it.
Sure. Thank you, and thank you for the break. Perhaps, clerk, if the clerk's office could put up the motion at the beginning. And I'll just add a bit of context before we move forward in the motion. So just to bring council up to speed, because I think not everyone has this information. In the fall, and we heard the passionate arguments around the chamber tonight, or this afternoon. Thank you very much. In the fall, all of the CAOs in our regular meeting of the 8 CAOs came forward and said, we're hearing from all our councils who have just been, our councils-elect who have just been at the doors, that safety and speed traffic is one of the top concerns, if not the top concern, at the door in every municipality. What are we going to do about this? We talked about how we have a couple of different safety programs, and in the area municipalities, there is work going on with traffic calming, with safety, road safety, and so on. I mentioned that we have work that we are bringing back. We anticipate, hadn't talked to the new council yet, around automated speed enforcement, because the last council had, I think, very similar conversations of how do we accelerate this. The view at the table, and I think this is shared, is that the region's work and the work of police is part of the work driven by each municipality. So two tiers hard sometimes, but I think as we're fitting in, knowing that there's a number of speed programs and traffic calming programs and so on in every single municipality, ranging from chicanes to speed bumps to some of the traffic control measures in school zones. We then reaffirmed that discussion in, I believe it was November of this council, that traffic safety was super important. And we, at the CAO table, said, let's have a meeting. And we asked Mathieu and Rod and Chief Crowell to attend the January 19th CAO meeting. Had a very productive discussion and agreed that we would go back to our respective councils and have that conversation. There's multiple moving parts, and we would keep people abreast of what is going on. Again, because we're not the only game in town. There's lots of work going on in the area municipalities. So we've brought this report back this morning in the context of that request from council, and we heard it again today. How do we accelerate camera-based traffic enforcement? I think if we could do it over again, we'd say, gee, this afternoon's presentation on the broader topic of road safety maybe should have gone first, because a lot of the questions this morning, we'll be having some of those conversations this afternoon. So to the point that a number of members of council made that, and I think it was Councillor Sullivan that said this most recently, we have to think of this in that framework. We are thinking of it in that framework, and this is one component piece. So if, through you, Chair, if I could walk through each of the components of the proposed recommendation, and the first component pieces were in the report. We'll talk about the additions in a moment. So, issuing a joint release for information on behalf of collaborating municipalities for the development and implementation of adjudicated case management system. We know we need to do that. That's the foundational work that needs to be done, whether we're running some of the other administrative pieces or we're going to a third party. This needs to be done. The next piece was authorizing the solicitor to go into the administrative penalty system, and we've talked about that, including preparation of necessary bylaws, because again, that's a necessary work, regardless of the number of cameras we have. And it's also necessary work as we continue to work on this, on the road safety and speed program. The automated speed program under D, just for clarification, in the current budget now, and I'll turn to Mr. Dyer to make sure I get this right, we had, based on previous council decision and the direction we were following, to produce a preliminary budget. The preliminary budget right now has 24 sites, and this would adjust that because we heard we've got to get going to 32 sites, and that's doable based on our capability and under B and C now. The expansion further than that is not yet doable because we have work to do. So if I can go to D. D in the existing report talks about, and we heard you last time and again reaffirmed today, we need to put forward a roadmap, a plan for rapid implementation to expand automated speed enforcement to all eligible school locations across the region. And the costing, the programming, the staff resources and admin capability. So I heard that again today. How do we go from, we've gone from 24 if this motion passes to 32, and how do we get to 100 and some? And how many cameras is that and so on? So this would, again, reaffirm we need more time to do that work and the costing. It's going to cost a lot more, we know. And then that gets us into the processing time and the challenges we're having with the capacity of our existing processing center. That has caused us to go down the paths of talking to a number of, or looking at a number of third-party options and looking at doing this ourselves and or other. So we are definitely down that path, and it's not just because of today. That's already in the report, and that's the rapid implementation. E, F, and G, I believe, complement the components above, including D. So not only is it a rapid implementation plan and us presenting that roadmap under D, E would give us a timeline to do that within, and that would be in the second quarter of 2023. What is that creation? What is that costing? How do we fund our own processing center? Let's look at third parties. So for clarity, we believe that's just a drill down on item D and our recommendation, and we're fine with that clarity as long as council is. F is that we undertake workshops with township staff. So this speaks to the conversation that we would have with the 4 township mayors and 4 CAOs. It's not to preclude what's going on in the urban centers. In the CAO meeting of January 19th, the urban CAO said, well, hang on, wait, what about us? And we said, we will do that work as well and continue to do that work in terms of the urban plans. There is specific work that we need to do with the rural areas that we haven't got to as much as we have done in the cities, and we need to play catch up. That workshop in March and April, we're saying would identify specific traffic calming problem statements. So what are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve speeding coming into the towns and villages? We heard today, and school zones and. So I think it's a little complicated to define that today, but we need to come out of that workshop with the specifics of exactly which problems, which towns, which villages, and what are we doing? And then what does that look like? This motion would require us to begin implementation of some solutions in 2023 in the summer, realizing that some solutions may take more time and some solutions may have to come back to council if there's a material cost component, and that might come back in the next budget for 2024. And finally, G, that we be directed to investigate the expansion of automated speed enforcement zones to include community safety zones. So right now we're focused on schools under the direction of the previous council. Our understanding is this council would like to expand that into exploring the potential introduction of community safety zones and automated speed enforcement outside school zones. So if I could just check in through you, Chair, if we've captured everything we talked about today.
It appears so. I have a question. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. Under item D, what's an eligible school zone and what's an ineligible school zone?
Matthew?
I think, and there it was written as all eligible school locations. So again, it's
School locations.
yeah. So I think it's just the definition of school zone with respect to the Highway Traffic Act. So again,
So-
it's school with frontage on the regional roads, et cetera, et cetera.
So all schools or locations are eligible?
We could say all school zones. Yep. If you prefer all school zones.
So we can take
yeah,
the
yeah.
eligible out of that.
Yeah, I think it's because there are some school locations that don't, you know, if there's not direct frontage on a regional road, for example, that could not be considered a school zone. So, but we can say to maybe all school zones instead of all eligible school locations. That would be clear.
Okay, thank you. And also, maybe it's worded differently here, but a couple of us or three of us had talked about the whole region being a community safety zone, to look at doing that and whether that's a possibility or not. But I'm not seeing that written in here. Is it here in other words that I'm not understanding?
Through the chair, I think I understood it as being part of G, just kind of the broader, just understanding the you know, to be able to bring back a variety of scenarios on community safety zones, do the full analysis of what's eligible, of what we can do, whether it can be extended to the full scale of the municipality, or we can bring that back as part of that.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Lochner, I'm going to speak, but I don't see G saying that, so.
Mr. Lochner.
Chair, I wonder, and Mathieu, if we would be better to have that direction through a separate motion in the context of the broader safety program discussion this afternoon, as this is pretty specifically focused on automated speed enforcement. Would that be a possibility?
It's fine with me if it's fine with the others who commented similarly.
Matthew?
So this afternoon is an information session. So, but I think I hear your direction on examining, and maybe we can add it to just say, to explicitly say, investigate the possibility of expanding community safety zones to the entire region.
Yes, that works. Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I just wanted to clarify, in reading the motion, perhaps Mr. Lochner, you can direct me to the section that talks about the possibility of adding more cameras. I see the adding sites, but I don't see, I'm having a hard time picking out where cameras are covered in this motion.
Yes, certainly. If we can go back to D, and it's an important point, Councillor Deutschman, to make sure we've captured your point. You're directing staff to present a roadmap for rapid implementation of plan to expand automated speed enforcement to all school locations. So by definition, that would mean all cameras, but happy to add clarity if needed.
I would like clarity to say investigating addition, because we have two, correct? I mean, so we want to look at additional cameras. I'd like to get that specifically.
Okay.
Thank you.
We could put in, through you, Chair, to the clerk, where it says including costing for infrastructure, somewhere in there, comma, the addition of cameras.
You know the terminology, but
yeah.
Defer to you.
Okay. Councillor Foxon?
Thank you. Just as far as I know, community safety zones fall under provincial regulation. So they said that you have to prove it warrants it. You cannot do a whole community. I believe when they first came out, because we did designate in North Dumfries certain community safety zones, we were told you cannot do a full community. Yeah. You have to, but we need clarification on that. And schools, eligible schools are ones covered under the school boards, because there's driving schools, there's other things that are called schools. So you have to specify that it's either Board of Education, Catholic Board of Education, or whatever type of Board of Education, because a lot of things call themselves schools. So that's why it says eligible. That follows under the provincial legislation definition of schools for children or young adults or even old farts like me. Anyways, carry on.
I don't see any other speakers, do we have a mover? So you questioned, Councillor Vivarnovic?
Yeah, no, I'm moving it, as I indicated earlier, but it was so long ago, it might have slipped your memory with at least, and so happy to do that. The only thing I would say is on the 2024 budget, again, I do think that this is something that potentially we could be dealing with mid-year, because I think we need to remember that the revenues from all this come to us. And so our practice up till now is simply to put it into general revenues. And Mr. Dyer counts it in that envelope. It does not mean that we cannot use the dollars to pay back our investment to put this in, and in some ways look at it as, I don't want to use the word, look at it as a utility in a sense, and treat it that way. And so I just want to make sure that by putting in the number 2024, and I think it was clause D, that we're not suggesting it needs to wait until then.
Mr. Lockton.
Yeah, I concur. I don't think that was our suggestion. Can we bring that back up? Just the wording, Tim, of D? I see. Mm-hmm.
Okay, while we're waiting, I don't know if Councillor Foxon wants to add a comment.
I was just going to say that the province doesn't want to see this as a cash grab for us. So our committee with the province has stated that we will use the funds to go back into the program to support the program, so that it's not as pierced as a cash grab. Because you understand that when you say community safety zones, it's double the fine. It's double the fine plus points. Yeah, so it could be a real, that's why we actually went for removing community safety zones and just said all roads.
All right, Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, I'd just like to second the motion.
Oh, excellent. Oh, and Matthew wants to chime in. Matthew.
Yes, thank you. Just to be clear on the budget implications, on page 9 of the report, there is an estimate of the revenue generated in 2023 and 2024, as well as the capital costs. So you see that I would say the setup costs you don't have a net positive when you set it up. And just the other pieces that we're happy that these automated speed enforcement devices actually reduce speeds. That's the ultimate objective. So the ultimate hope is that at some point we're not going to get a lot of offenses from it. So it will not be a self-sustaining program. And we will see, as we've observed in a number of locations where they're already put in place, the reduction of speed is 5 kilometers an hour to 9 kilometers an hour on average. So there will be some reduced revenue. And as we implement some of the physical measures and the rest of the road safety policy, because it's a whole package, that revenue should decrease. So just for clarification on the short-term impacts and kind of the longer-term objectives of the policy.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. If we could put that motion up one last time. Yep. So perhaps one last read through. Okay, so let's start with D. The additional items we've added here is direct staff to present a roadmap for a rapid implementation plan to expand automated speed enforcement to all school locations across the region, aligned with upcoming strategic planning, including costing for the infrastructure, addition of cameras, and programming of the camera technology, market capacity to respond, staff resources and budgets, and administrative capacity required, as well as options for increasing processing capacity. E, that staff be directed to report back by the second quarter of 2023 with A plan for the creation, costing, and funding of a Region of Waterloo processing center, and B, information on potential third-party providers of this service. F, that staff undertake workshops with township staff in March and April 2023 to identify specific traffic calming problem statements and implementation of possible solutions, including road redesign beginning in summer 2023. And G, that staff be directed to investigate the expansion of the automated speed enforcement program to include community safety zones, including the entire region. Moved by Councillor Verbanovic, seconded by Councillor Shantz.
Apologies to the chair. In the when we say all, I think it would be more precise to say all school zones. To Councillor Foxton's point, to say all school zones rather than all school locations, because school zones
are clearly
to
defined in the Act. Okay, all school zones. So we'll make that change. Please use your. We'll pull up eScribe and use your yes or no button on eScribe with regards to that motion. And that is carried. We have item 8.1, Council Committee Tracking List received for information. Number 9, other business. We have received a motion of notice of motion from Councillor James that was listed on today's agenda. Do we have a seconder for Councillor James' motion? Seconded by Councillor Deutschmann. We want to pull that motion up, and we'll let Councillor James speak to that motion. Councillor James.
All right, thank you. Thank you for seconding the motion. I presented this motion because I do believe that there was a flaw in this process in terms of bringing us the final police budget without having an opportunity to speak with us and essentially the community in a transparent way. And I do believe that we need to build relations with our police. We are at a time where our community right now is really struggling in terms of financial. And the ways in which we have to do this is probably change a process. And so I am requesting that the police do come to us prior to finalizing the 2024 budget in order to allow for us to have dialogue for community to see, what's been happening prior to. And I think that if we don't do this and we don't push this forward, it really does a disservice to us and to our community. And what I will say is that last week, the police chief and the police board were here. We had 3 hours of questions, things that needed clarification. That right there says that we need to provide more opportunities. And the realities are, there is one narrative, but there are counter narratives. And I just want to say that while we do have an increase in crime, we know that is a truth. There is also a truth and a responsibility for the police to really provide better care for all residents of this region and to show us how they're doing it. I know some people around the table have said that, they get calls for people they need more protection. Well, I am getting the emails that are specifically stating that they are being over-policed, that they're terrified. And I want to know, and these are, questions that I had about how are police reducing crime, preventing crime, and I think these are adequate questions. I also have been receiving, I know some councillors as well, just the financial implications that this budget has. So there are valid questions, and I think that what this showed, especially last week, is that there is a need for more dialogue, more communication, and we need to build relationships. And asking them to come prior to finalizing, I think, is part of that way we can address this going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just noting the wrong motion was being posted, so that was the one dealing with the police budget itself. I want to thank Councillor James for bringing forward this motion. If you recall, there was a bit of surprise when Mr. Dyer had announced that police services had approved their budget, and we were advised of that at council meeting here. And it was just a touch of a shock to me, just because I had recalled when Councillor Craig and I were sitting at this table years ago, the approach was that police services would come to council for a meeting and their treasurer would explain what the budget was and what they were looking for. And we offered guidance. I can remember clearly Councillor Galloway back then expressing a particular percentage interest increase that we would like to see as a community. And there was no pushback or anything. It was just collaboration and cooperation, and they went back and worked on it. And in fact, there were times when numbers of officers were discussed. So this is nothing foreign certainly to Waterloo Regional Council. I think I would submit that this has been the general practice before. And Councillor James raises a good point. You can tell by the length of that last meeting we had, which was exhausting, because it really only gave us the first opportunity to present our viewpoint. You know, I see sort of the Police Services Board as the directors of the corporation, the police themselves, the executives, and we are the representatives of the shareholders, the taxpayers of the community, and we should have an opportunity to express some points and some views. Further, from a legalistic perspective, as Mr. Schelling's memo that he circulated to us about the interaction between region and Police Services Board, it is well within our purview to direct Police Services Board to come to us and provide that information ahead of time and hear from us ahead of time. Because that section, and Mr. Schelling, I don't have the section offhand with me, but I know we commented briefly on it. And it says shall. Shall in law is definitive. And this is council now saying that we shall want Police Services Board to come before us and work together. I think it's a very collegial, very collaborative approach, and I think it should be supported, and hopefully everyone will support that today. Thank you.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Harris. I wondered if Councillor James and Deutschmann would entertain a friendly amendment to the motion. Because one of the things that I would like to see added, if you're amenable to it, is that there's going to be a lot of delegations coming to, I think, tomorrow night that have indicated that they're going to talk a lot about the police budget. So I would like to see in the Police Services Board work around them developing the budget. I would like to see them having like a community engagement exercise and so that we understand what work they're doing to engage the community, to contribute their thoughts in a proactive way prior to it being approved or even brought to us for our comments. So if you take that as a friendly amendment.
I'll let Councillor James entertain that.
Yeah, I'll entertain that. I do believe they do, but I think it should be in there. I'd be okay with that.
I'd like to really. So I guess part of my issue with it is that if they are doing if they were actually doing a really good job, why are we getting potentially 32 delegations coming tomorrow night? Who maybe they're not all going to talk about the police budget, but why weren't those delegations going a month or two or in the fall to the police board? Like take their delegation, not that we don't want to hear from people, but have the delegations go to the board. Like I just wonder if there's a misunderstanding in the
I'll kind of
community.
speak to that because, as you probably are well aware, it will be, potentially equity-seeking group, racialized groups, those who are marginalized. There's always been that notion that, residents can go to the board or go to the police board. That's an intimidating space to people who've been traumatized. So I feel like we are the bridge here. I do think, yes, there are avenues for the residents to go to police, services board, speak to them. Like I said, it's intimidating. Also, the whole notion of how we approach speaking as a delegation is based on a measure of privilege. Not everybody can take the day off between 9 and 12. Not everyone can access. So there are barriers there that I think need to be addressed, and the notion of expecting people to come to instead of going out in the communities, that needs to be redesigned and looked at differently. So yes, community engagement is absolutely key. The ways in which the police board, the police services, what have you, engage with community, they should be telling us how they're doing that. That's the accountability piece.
Right. Can I respond to that? Through you, Chair. So absolutely. I certainly take your lead on this, Councillor James. What I want to understand through this process is that that maybe the process is redesigned as you're suggesting, so that there is comfort and that whichever the way it's going to work best, particularly for equity-seeking groups, that the process is changed so that it respects their needs and wishes. So
absolutely,
that's really what I'm driving
One would be
towards.
not showing up in uniform everywhere, but that's a whole other conversation.
Chair Redmond.
Sorry, I had to push harder. I just really want to support what Councillor James was saying, and maybe a friendly amendment is to ask, as the reporting and comes back to council, that it include what they are doing and how they see improving it. I don't think we can assume, I know we can't assume that those things are not happening, because they are, and they're happening with leadership of WRPS and board members going to specific groups have talked about a less than perfect experience and how we can improve it. And so those conversations are happening. So maybe as part of this motion, and I have no problem with this motion, but I would point out to colleagues too that election years are anomalies. It's always really difficult to get elected, to get sworn in, and then be thrown in the deep end of WRPS budget and the budget at the region. None of it is simple. And I would say that in the past, delegations have come to the police board to delegate. And I think that improved communication can only bode well both for WRPS as well as the region. But also to point out that people come to the region of Waterloo because they want investment in upstream issues. And I think that the previous council and this council, I assume, would continue to invest in those kinds of things. And that is really something that is the purview of the region of Waterloo, because we are the service manager and sometimes the provider of the social determinants of health that absolutely help support our community. So it is appropriate for people to come and make those requests of us, because we are one of the people that can help direct those services.
Councillor Fox.
I really like how this is going in the conversation. When's the motion going to be?
When? Right now.
Right now, it's not. So it's not a notice of motion, it's actual motion.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. This is one of the steps in healing. Police, it used to be an integral part of society. It was really connected. And over decades and years, it's sort of gotten at odds with each other, at polar ends. And I think this motion is part of the process of bringing it back together, bring it back to the humanness of it. And so, as I said in the past, behind every anger is a hurt. And so tomorrow night we're going to hear the anger, understanding the hurt. And I hope the police realize that too. And they may not always want to hear facts and figures or numbers, but they want to hear maybe that the police actually care. Thank you.
Councillor Verbenevik.
Thanks very much. And I mean, this is an interesting conversation, particularly after the one we had the other day. And I think it's really part of, I gather, a few motions that we're going to be considering today and tomorrow and so on. So from the perspective of this motion, I certainly can support this, because really what this motion is calling for is additional dialogue, additional engagement. And to be clear, I think that additional engagement needs to happen with regional council, it needs to happen with area councils, and it needs to happen with the community as a whole, because the area municipalities have a very close working relationship with Waterloo Regional Police as well, in terms of some of the challenges and issues that we're dealing with at the local level. Having said that, I think we also need, and I acknowledge, I hear from groups across the spectrum, and I think we need to be careful that we don't, in the process of this conversation, start to compartmentalize groups, because as an example, there's no question in my mind that there are some who are in racialized or other equity-seeking groups who have expressed concern about the police. On the other end, I know of numerous groups that have very close partnerships with the Waterloo Regional Police, and in fact want to work very closely and collaboratively with them. So I think we need to make sure that whatever process moves forward, in fact, reflects the will and the viewpoints, the broad set of viewpoints that exist in the community, and the balance that we as civic leaders need to provide on this issue. There's no question that times have changed, but quite frankly, the Waterloo Regional Police is a partner in terms of our community and in terms of how our system of democratic government operates in our civil society, and I think we need to keep that in mind as we go forward. Thank you,
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm pleased to support this, and I'm grateful that Councillor James brought it forward. I think I have a list here from our meeting last week when the police were here, and I had 7 things that people asked that they weren't prepared or did not have the information to share with us. And so to me, there would be some advantage in them coming back with a draft budget where we have that opportunity to ask those questions and then get a response before we receive or asked to approve the final budget. And I hope we can see this as simply a friendly invitation to engage in constructive and meaningful dialogue and nothing more. That it doesn't create any kind of divisions between who we are as a regional council, the community, and the Police Services Board to have a collegial working relationship going forward. The police are a third of our budget, so it is a significant piece. And for me, there's a bit of equity with the other 2/3 of the municipality or of the organization. In years like this year, when it's a tough budget year, we do ask that other 2/3 of the organization to perhaps trim the budget and maybe come back with a reduced budget. And what I see this giving us the ability to do to the other 2/3 of the police services is say, can you respond to us the same way that the other 2/3 of the organization responds? And in a year like this, maybe there is an opportunity that you can help us save some tax dollars. So I think there is an equity with the rest of the staff that represent the region of Waterloo, and hopefully the police will see that as an equal partnership, that we're all in this together, and for the opportunity to perhaps in future years have a more give and take opportunity as to how we could affect the levy. Thank you.
Councillor Craig.
No, you're going to have to wait. Anyways, I think we need to be careful about our words and what we're suggesting here. I'm in favor of sending it back if that's what the wish of the regional council is. I'm also a shareholder in the budget, along with Councillor Deutschman, and I'm also sitting on the Police Services Board. But I think we need to be careful with words. I mean, you can talk about inequity and you can talk about intimidating, but anybody coming to that podium tomorrow speaking to us gets 5 minutes to speak on $1 billion budget. Is that fair? When you think about the time frame we're giving people, or the fact that out of 20 delegations, only 2 are from Cambridge. You know, and I could raise that issue. And you got to be careful here. So we send it back, that's fine, no problem. But I think we got to be careful of words like defund. It's a very angry word. And I think what people are, it's a very angry word. And what people are saying essentially is they want to remodel, retool the police, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to hear parts of that tomorrow. I'm supportive of the police from the point of view of having gone out in an election and going to approximately 5,000 doors. That was hard on me. And talking to people, and people are in favor of better policing. They're concerned about their communities. I think we have to keep that in mind all the time. And I'm prepared to deal with other issues that may come forth from different groups and reflect on what they're saying and try to adjust my thinking and perhaps having a different viewpoint. But I think we also have to keep in mind the morale of the people out there on the beats every day, okay? The people that walk down the back alleyways at midnight, we would never walk down. That's what we have to keep in mind. And I'm concerned about that to some extent, okay?
Thank you.
So I will support this, and I think there's no problem with what you're asking, and as a member of the board, we'll take it back, have a look at it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just a reminder, obviously, we've got, I think, Councillor James's notice of motion up, 9.1 with regards to the, practice of presenting the draft budget to council and to the community. That's the one that we've got before us today. So, Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully support this motion. I think that, what's happened this year, it's too bad that it did happen because we needed to hear, we all had constituents coming before us, and we could have brought those viewpoints forward in this draft budget. I'm okay with the police budget because it covers a lot of the things that my constituents have brought forward. I don't have that same lens that others around the horseshoe have because we have different groups in each of our communities. But I think they all need to be heard, and we are that voice that takes it forward to the Police Services Board. I'm okay with their budget because, as Chief Crowley said, that their expenses have not been handled appropriately over the past few years, and they're only climbing. We all know about the crime that's been happening in the community, and we need to make sure that that's taken care of. So I hear Councillor Craig, I hear the others around this table. I'm 100% behind this motion, and I think it only makes us a better group of representatives of the people going forward. Thank you.
Okay. We'll post this the motion from Councillor James. It was moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Deutschman. We will now. There was the change. There was the addition of Councillor McCabe's portion. Councillor James, are you good with the addition there? Okay. All right, so we will read that added additional part. Therefore, be it resolved that the Region of Waterloo Council respectfully requests that the Waterloo Regional Police Service Chief of Police, A, return to its past practice and present its draft annual budget to Regional Council and to the community to allow time for both the Regional Council and the community to review and to provide comments prior to the Waterloo Regional Police Service Board finalizing its annual budget, and B, ensure that the community engagement process be included in the development of the annual budget prior to presenting its draft annual budget to Regional Council. Councillor Verbanovic.
The one thing I had requested be referenced was area municipalities. So regional council, comma, area municipalities and community.
Okay, we'll add those parts. Councillor Shantz.
And then, sorry, I had to step out for part of the conversation, but was there a time, like a time window that council was looking for?
This would be for next budget, right?
No, how much time ahead? Like, do you want it, are we saying October? Are we saying December? Are we saying January? So like, what's the time frame that you want it ahead of? I think the police board will need to know that.
Councillor James?
Yeah, I mean, this is the part where you're trying to build relationships. So they could come 6 months in the year. They could come 2 months before the budget is finalized. I think there's an opportunity here for the police board to really connect with us prior to. I don't know if it needs to be a month before budget. I don't know if that's enough time, but you plan the budget planning process starts in March or something like that. There's opportunities. So maybe that's the discretion of the police services board, but there should be communication to us prior to finalizing.
Okay.
I'll leave it out there. Maybe that's for greater discussion.
Yeah, I think that there's perhaps an opportunity again for the finance staff when developing the budget timetable to work with our colleagues over at the finance folks at police to ensure that they've got the proper buffer built in. Yeah. So, Chair Redmond.
Just further to that, and I think it's a really good question. I would have to tell you that I think that what we're talking about is a relationship, just further to what Councillor James was saying. So I think Councillor Shantz asked a really good question. I've already talked to the chief, and there is an intention that this would be an ongoing dialogue from time to time. I don't want to pin the chief down to whether it would be quarterly, but I would also point out that the financial staff and leadership at WRPS works very, very closely with the Mr. Dyer and his staff. So it's not like this isn't something that's sort of done with an ongoing dialogue, but I think this motion really speaks to the relationship between WRPS, that board, and this council. So I would see this as an ongoing issue that feeds into the budget but deals with those bigger issues.
Okay, I think if we want to post that motion up one last time. And in the meantime, we'll get eScribe up and ready to vote. I won't bother rereading, but it appears that has. Okay. All right. It looks like it's going to it looks like it's going to pass, is what I was going to say. But if those that want to be recorded that are not on here, yeah, it'll say like 11 in favor. Does anyone need any more time to vote? Okay, I think we've got everybody there now, right? And that is passed. We will now start a vote to go into closed session. There are 3 items on the agenda for closed. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Fox and seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Again, please vote. Yeah, and I want to note that there is a third closed item, receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege recently, so that's just an addition to the closed agenda. And that is carried. We will now move downstairs for the closed portion of the meeting.
Sorry, and a motion to adjourn.
And yes, we will now start a vote to adjourn the meeting. Please use your yes or no buttons to do that. Moved by Chair Redmond, seconded by Councillor Salonen. Now you get to vote. We'll get this figured out. It's carried.